Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. What's up, YouTube? How are we doing? Welcome to the show. We are doing, as you can see on the slideshow on the screen, the unofficial Summer Games Done Quick 2022 prediction show. Shoutouts to Dino and Bedrock Bowling. I am joined by three of my good friends, compatriots, throwing down to give our best guesses at what games are going to get into SGDQ 2022. The games list is actually coming out tomorrow, which if you're watching this on YouTube was April 30th.
Mike, start your timer.
Oh, yeah, I guess, bam. Yeah, we should have the timer going. Yeah, let's do that. But yeah, we are guessing roughly in the ballpark of about 130 hours of games. That's generally around how many they end up taking for the show. I do know a couple things. We'll go around and just get everyone's opening thoughts real quick. But yeah, just to let y'all know, this is going to be a hard process to predict, considering this is going to be the first semi-live GDQ event in years. It's actually going to be semi-online, some in person. We don't know the ratio. Maybe the games committee didn't really know until, I imagine the games list is done or maybe being finished up right now. But again, I'm spikevegeta. Who are the other three joined by me? I'm joined by my good friend Studio.
Howdy.
Howdy. Joined by Ghoul02.
Yo, how's it going, everybody?
And Ghost Kumo. How you doing, gamers?
Howdy.
Howdy. The four of us.
I like how the one Texan doesn't say howdy.
I also like how you're the only name that's misspelled on the slide.
Yeah, what the
Yeah,
fuck?
right. Because I'm just straight up capturing the slideshow here. But yeah, guys, we're going to go through. We will go through category by category. I do want to remind you guys that, bam, if we split, we're going over to the disclaimer. Again, we are idiots, not the official games committee. We do this for fun. Again, none of us in any way work with GDQ. I guess I am the closest to working with them, where I do like interviews for them during the show and everything, but I am not even anywhere close to being considered staff or anything. We are purely looking at there are about 1,550 some odd submissions this year, and we guessed which 100 or so we're going to get into the event. Again, like I said, the fact that it is somewhat online and somewhat offline, and we don't know what the ratio is, means we were more than any other year in the past. We are super guessing. There's a lot that we can pretty much assume that was offered that this can only be done remotely. But we only know so much. We can only go off what we see in front of us and try to make a games list somewhat similar to what live events have been in the past, mixed in with a little bit of, they could do some online here and there. I don't know, for the three of you in the call, if I had to guess, Ghost King, I know you brought up maybe like 80% on-site, 20% off-site, maybe that kind of a ratio.
I'm not really sure. That's probably like the low end. I think my guess is like 2 days worth of runs would be online and 4.5 would be offline.
Mm-hmm.
And I think kind of they'll try to group them up as much as possible so they don't have to change their setup as much. I really don't know how they plan to go about it, but knowing that ESA did something like that and it was a generally successful event at doing it does provide some reassurance.
I mean, to me, I see it as being either 8 hours, like a day of runs, where it's like they close the stream room at midnight, reopen at 8 a.m.
Right.
I can see that going all the way because, I mean, that means there's less, they don't have to have security around, checking for, everybody's wearing their masks and all that stuff. It just makes things a lot cleaner if you do that. Which sucks. It means that if you're remote, you're doing graveyard shift almost no matter what. But so I can see it being anywhere from like a third of the event is remote to as low as 4 hours a night, which would be, I guess, half of a third. So 1/6 of the runs would be offsite. But
live on the show.
Yeah, the only real inclination we had for who even is online and offline, if we look at somebody's speedrun.com page and it says they're from like South America or East Asia, we could probably hazard a guess they're more likely to. Right. And then people we specifically know pretty well that they might have some sort of complication that would prevent them from going. That's basically about it.
Yeah. But for the most part, I feel like we didn't put a ton of thought into that. I think we just said, these are the submissions in front of us. We don't have that info, so we're not going to worry too much about that. Go ahead, Studio.
I was going to say, in the end, it's a weird thing, too, because Ghoul mentioned doing stuff overnight, but what if there's a bunch of sick runs you'd actually want in prime time? So there's a lot of cool things and a lot of guesswork we'd have to do. So I think what we really did was just what makes a good show?
Right.
What's a marathon that if I saw the schedule for, I'd be like, that's awesome. Hell yeah, let's roll.
And I think that's probably how they're going for it as well.
Yeah, because you can move stuff around, but it's like, and we don't know the tech setup, and that's something they probably have to figure out themselves. Is like, hey, maybe there's a situation where they could put online runs in between normal runs, and then just use that as setup time for the normal run. Like, there's a lot of stuff they could do, but we don't really know, and I don't know if they knew until they started really looking into it for this marathon.
I can't imagine they went in with a hard idea. I think if they had a hard idea of, overnight is online and in the day is on site, I think they almost would have just announced that. I think it is a very fluid process for them as well, seeing what's it going to be. They also probably, obviously COVID's still a thing. Like,
I could also even see them doing something where it's like they have a 2-hour block at 5 o'clock every day from 2 to 7. That is online, and then they have an overnight shift that's online. So that way they can close the stream room down. But we don't know. And they didn't really give us figures for, hey, we're looking at this percentage of online only, or they didn't even say how saying you could go or not go would influence if your runs are likely to be taken or not.
It's fun when you fill out the form to submit. You have to put in your online streaming information. And I think I'm gonna be there.
Yeah.
Please don't pay attention. I don't need to worry about.
Right. I don't remember if there was a box you could check for I will not do online. I'm going to go. This is the only way I would get in. So don't worry about my shitty internet. I don't know, but we'll see. Anyway,
I think they said if they have to move everything to online, you get your run in, but you have to they'll check with you or whatever.
Yeah.
That does make it a little harder for certain runs, given relay race submission type stuff. But, I don't think they're factoring that in too heavily.
And considering the world we live in right now, again, GDQ right now, chat, is less than 2 months away. It's right around the corner, so we'll be seeing what goes on. Want to give you guys a quick overview of our submissions and our process. Generally, what we do is we go through all the submissions. We take the 4 of us, and we'll generally try to split them up a little bit. Okay, you guys maybe go focus, just a random example. Ghost King and Ghoul have done a lot of prediction shows for RPG limit breaks in the past. Obviously, a marathon that, believe it or not, is mainly focused on RPGs almost completely, actually completely. So they covered pretty much going through all the RPGs, and they still consulted Studio and I about it. But obviously, when you have 1,500 submissions, you can't really look at every single one of them and have a complete opinion on it. So we did meet up and talk about a lot of different things. But yeah, other than that, if we knew the game pretty well, and we knew the submitter, we didn't have to think too much about it. We didn't have to go look up footage or anything. We know what Mitch looks like when he plays Super Mario Brothers 3. He's pretty cute. He's pretty sexy. Other games Flintstones Bedrock Bowling we've seen in the past, we had to go look that one up. We had to go do some research. Probably a somewhat similar process to what the Games Committee has to do. Going to speedrun.com and, just start looking around, start finding footage. And I'll tell you what, chat, every year it's always fun going through them, finding the games that we've never heard of and are actually banger speedruns or just fucking hilarious.
Yeah, those tend to be the things that we use as our basis, which I imagine staff probably does to some extent, but they're more thorough about it, given, we tend to do this in our free time. But if the game is silly, we look at it and it's all right, how much does this make us laugh or at least amuse us? If the game is awesome, how blown away are we by its tech or movement or whatever? Or if the game is uber popular, how popular is this game relative to how good the run is? So,
well, with that, chat, we have got a lot of categories to get into. We got to cover about 130 hours worth of games. So let's go ahead and jump into that sucker. Starting off with we are doing Mario. Obviously, believe it or not, we are predicting there will be Mario in this marathon. I don't believe there's been a GDQ where we have not seen some Mario, and it's usually in decent supply. And there were definitely a lot of really strong submissions. I know a couple that we didn't even take. Some really good Super Mario Odyssey offers. There was a really good offer for Super Mario Galaxy 2. Almost every 2D Mario had some sexy stuff. Some really good Mario ROM hacks like Celeste.smc, a SMW Celeste mixture of a ROM hack that was pretty cool. But the ones we took, bam! were these suckers. These 6 chosen ones right here. We'll just kind of go down them. People can jump on if they want to talk about each of them. I'll bring up, first of all, we got a couple of the 3D Marios. We had some really, really strong submissions in Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine that we decided to take over Galaxy 2 and Odyssey. Both really, really high-level races. Cheese and Simply throwing down in 120 star of SM64. Haven't actually seen that for a while. And Super Mario Sunshine between, I believe it was Average Trey and Reed, two of the top runners over there.
Real quick, this is something we're actually doing a little bit different from the show. You can actually see where the last time the run was in the event. If the game and category are different from the last time they did it, it'll show you there. These are specifically to Done Quick events, such as Summer and Awesome Games Done Quick, Games Done Quick Express, as well as the Corona Relief, Harvey Relief, and Japan Relief. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's not very many runs that like the last time they were in was Japan Relief, but just to kind of give you an example, we didn't include Hotfix or the Frame Fatales events because I don't believe those have really factored into GDQ's decision making in the sense that, like, you know, if you got into one of those, you might be a little bit less likely to get in. Like, those events in particular, like, if they do well, those actually tend to boost the chances of the run getting a, like, showing at a main GDQ, but ultimately we didn't factor that in super heavily, and so that's not going to show up on this show. Just a quick disclaimer.
Yeah, and again, we like to have that column there because I thought it'd just be a really cool idea to, because a lot of games are just at a certain point, you got to look back. Ghost King did a lot of work trying to categorize everything that's been done since 2016, so for the last 6 years of GDQs, and say, hey, when are games, we constantly say, when are they just in season? Some games, you see them once every 10 years. Some games, you see them every other event. It just depends on kind of how big the game is, how big it is as a speedrun, how big of a response it gets at a GDQ. So, yeah, the last time we've really seen a real traditional Mario 64 run was 4 years ago, back at GDQ Express when Cheese ran it. And been a while. We've seen, like, blindfolded runs, different variations on that sort of stuff. But cool to see that potentially here, and Super Mario Sunshine in this NE% race, 2 high-level races. Kind of the second of the... Go ahead.
Say one more thing. Big shout-outs to GDQ VODs as well. Makes it really easy sometimes to go back and double-check some of these as well. We have a spreadsheet of our own, but occasionally it's easier to just go in GDQ VODs and type in the name and double-check that way. So... anyways, go ahead. I just wanted to shout out for the site that helps a lot.
Absolutely, yeah. There are a lot of resources out there that make our job a lot easier, so big appreciate that. Our second of our 3 kind of groups right here from the Mario series, we got both Mario Brothers 1 and 3. There was definitely some really solid submissions for both 2 and Lost levels as well, as there is almost every year. But Super Mario Brothers, we saw the potential for either a race or a solo run of SMB Warpless, obviously a classic, and Super Mario Brothers 3 in 100%. I forgot, I don't believe this was a co-op submission. It was just the last time we saw it was a co-op. And even though we just saw SMB3 last SGDQ, they do this sucker all the time. It's SMB3. It's the biggest NES game of all time. And it gets done a lot. It's a good speed game.
It's a little bit, I think this was one of our, like, last games that we ended up leaving on the list. In part because there's just a lot of competition. When you factor in Super Mario Bros. 1, Mario Bros. 3, Mario Maker, Mario World, they all kind of hit the same audience, for better or worse. You know, you're kind of getting your official Mario 2D platformer fix, and all of these do this very well, and a lot of times you don't necessarily see this much, especially because Mario Maker being an hour and 15 minutes really kind of amps up the length of this block in general. And Mario Maker, usually when they put it together, it ends up getting into the event just because it makes a lot of money with donations. It ends up being one of the most watched runs of the event. It just tends to showcase a lot of people in the community very well, which they like doing because, especially at a live event like this, you know, the first, you know, partially live event since, you know, pre-COVID means that, you know, being able to do fun stuff like this is a big reason that they would want to, you know, have it at a live event like this. So.
And that's actually a big part of why we have both Mario Maker and Mario Worlds level relay races. They're kind of very similar things. They've done both at an event before, back when Mario Maker 2 was set to release. Like, the hype around that was really big. But they haven't really had the chance to do that in quite a while. So, we just see this as, like, big moneymaker of, like, you know, crazy levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say if there's anything I have big reservations on, I wonder, because that is a lot of runner slots and a lot of just people in general who have to go to the event. I wonder if we maybe bite off a little bit too much here with both Mario Maker and the Mario World blind relay race here. But at the end of the day, I do agree with you all. This is a massive moneymaker, like, for both of these. People love watching this stuff. Some of their favorite runs of the marathon. So we'll have to see. Again, it's really just going to be, does GDQ potentially want that many different people, like, on stage at the same time? Is there going to be, like, some safety protocols there? Again, we can't predict that stuff, so we just said, you know what? This would be a good show. We'll see what happens.
Even then, I think there's actually safety in having redundant runners as well. When you have if you have an hour 15 slot with one runner that is capable of doing the run and they can't make it last minute, all of a sudden you got to fill an hour 15 at the event somehow.
Right.
If you have 15 runners doing that run, if 3 of them don't show up, you still got a 12 runner event. Like, obviously it's a bit of an exaggeration, but I actually don't think that necessarily would help or hurt it very much.
But we'll see. That is our Mario representation. A good amount of Mario here. Chat, just a second. I gotta get up another soundtrack real quick. You know what? This one looks good. We'll do a little Zelda and chill. And which is actually good because very conveniently, the next thing we're talking about is. I'm not gonna do that to every single one of them. I just had to have a little bit of theming right there. We're gonna talk a little bit about The Legend of Zelda. Just a second. Let me go. And then boom, and then we're good. Okay, I had to make sure that the music was actually going on in the background. But yeah, Legend of Zelda. Obviously, another staple franchise, probably along with Mario, has never not been done at a GDQ. And
It's worth noting that they've actually taken less and less more recently. GDQ's gotten into kind of the more experimental phase over the past few events, and given that their donation total actually at an online event surpassed their peak total finally of an in-person event, like I think that they see the success of doing a bit more out there kinds of stuff. So we don't have a ton of Zelda. There wasn't a whole lot of offers that we were like in love with that also hadn't been in super recently.
It's hard as well because I feel like for a long time GDQ, they went from over-indexing really badly into Mega Man to really over-indexing into Zelda. And there's a weird factor, especially with donations, where when you hit the same demographic over and over again, you get a little bit more money, but like there's a point of diminishing returns for sure. And they were probably way past that, and they might, especially since they started cutting back and seeing results, they might continue to try to find what the sweet spot for the amount of Zelda would be. So I think this is probably this might be a little bit light, but I think this is as GK said, this was the ones that we were most excited about.
This is actually, we say light, but again, it's been 5 years since they really you saw 12 hours of Zelda games being chucked into the marathon where they just said, hey, if there's a good Zelda submission, we're throwing it in. Now it's very competitive to try to get yours in. You have to be world record holder at one of the 5 or 6 most popular to really feel like you got a super shot. Out of the ones we have here, I really like Breath of the Wild, any percent. I just think that is pound for pound such a damn good speed run. I think there's tons of different tech that you get in a small little 30-minute package. Obviously, one of the most popular games of all time. You got TGH, I know, offering up the Minish Cap. I guess our only 2D pick of all the Zeldas right here. I remember there was also some really good Zelda 2 picks among the group right there.
Yeah, that was one of our last cuts with Zelda 2. We don't really like to do honorable mentions too much on the show. They come up as we go along. We don't have an honorable mention.
This would go for 8 hours if we did that.
Yeah. But Minish Cap, R1 2D representative. And Ghost Anna, we talked about it a little bit. This potential Wind Waker race right here.
Yeah, so Wind Waker was a game that they did every other event or back to back for a solid 2.5 years. It was just in constantly, and so they took a break on it for the last 2.5 years. So it feels like it's back in cycle. The category is a bit of a new one. So it's less glitchy than the any percent, which if I understand correctly, it's just really hard to complete at this point. And they have 3rd, 5th, 6th, and 7th all submitting this. So you have a good pedigree of runners all submitting for a big old race, which I don't think we've had a big 2D. I don't think we've really had a big Zelda race since AGDQ 2020 when they had the big relay race. Breath of the Wild's kind of nice because they have the record holder Minish Cap. They have the record holder, and Minish Cap's gotten a lot faster than it used to be. So just kind of just nice progression and top pedigree of runners all around.
Yeah, I think they found new discoveries in Minish Cap. Literally, I could be wrong about this. I know Wokie's in chat, Mr. Shasta, some people who follow the 2D Zelda train a little bit more than me. I want to say they found some new tech for this game, like right after SGDQ 2019 or like around the same time. To where all of a sudden, yeah, it'd be cool to showcase it off again. And TGH always does a great job. And then we have one of our only task submissions that we actually took right here. I think this is actually our only one, yeah. In a Ocarina of Time, a beta showcase. Which, I don't know, Ghoul, do you want to explain kind of what this is, like, at all?
It's a little strange. I don't think the description necessarily fully explains it, but from what it sounds like, what it seems like they're going to do is they're going to have a live player on the console. And then I'm guessing they'll have the taskbot hooked up, probably in, like, controller port 4. And as we all know, Ocarina of Time is a game that you can do very funny things to when you start fiddling around with it. So the idea that I'm guessing is going to happen is on a live console, they're going to use TaskBot to inject code into the Ocarina of Time cartridge. And I don't know if it's intended to just mess with the player or showcase cool things or help the player. We don't really understand that. My guess is they'll probably have fun with like the R-Wing that's like, in the game's code that I feel like everybody at this point knows about. It's like
everybody that in this in speedrun communities knows about, but not necessarily GDQ viewers.
Yeah, it's definitely like there's potential here. It's one of those things like if you followed it for a while, Dwango's really been obsessed with the idea of trying to combine live runners with TaskBot. He's done it. He tried to get like the TaskBot versus live runner race and like a lot of things, similar-ish ideas like that. So I think this is him trying to expand on that idea in a new way. I'll be totally blunt. I'm not fully sold on the idea, but I think it's like the only task that I looked at and said this feels like something that GDQ wants to do. And there's a weird thing with tasks where it's like there's only so far they can go with it at this point.
Right.
They've already programmed Mario 1 into Super Mario World. Like, what more can you really do?
I don't really mean this in a negative way. TaskBot peaked right there. When they did that, I was like, I don't know what else they can really do to ever top that in the future. And they definitely had good showcases and whatnot in the, past that. But we've definitely seen less and less TaskBot in GDQs over the last few years, trying to find where those sweet spot submissions that'd be really cool to showcase off at a marathon.
Real quick before we move on, there is one thing I do want to bring up. I know we don't bring up a lot of near misses. I would still keep an eye on Phantom Hourglass as one of the very few Zeldas.
It should be done at some point.
It's got a big enough name, and it's also it's a Zelda game they've never done, and they've just over-indexed so heavily into Zelda and without ever having done it. It's one of those games that just feels like they'll do it eventually, but if you predict it, you will be wrong every time you predict it.
Yeah, there's a certain amount. Here's a theme for the four of us in this call chat. At a certain point, it's like the Mario Party rule. For years, I was saying, they're gonna do Mario Party Minigame Island. It's gonna happen. After 7 straight years of them telling us no, I said, you know what? I'm gonna let them surprise us. And there will be some surprises. I really think over the last few years, especially in the online era, but even a little bit before that, GDQ has become more and more experimental, trying out different games. That's why we're seeing less Zelda, less Mega Man, a lot of these kind of staple franchises, and seeing more of let's Scooby-Doo, let's get some weird stuff in there, but they're actually pretty cool speedruns, yada, yada, yada. They will surprise us, but we can't predict those. It's trying to predict which 15 seed is going to be the 2 seed in the NCAA basketball tournament. You can't predict it after a while. It's never going to be the one that you see coming. So we'll see what they surprise us with this year. We'll see. Moving on.
The best way to predict the past stuff, what they're going to do in the future, is by looking at what they've done in the past. And if they haven't taken it in the past, despite us thinking this would be a really solid, interesting take, it's very hard to predict that moving forward as well.
Right. It is also worth noting that the way that GDQ handles picks is fundamentally changed multiple times over the years. It used to be just Mike Uyama and maybe a couple other staff guys were just I want you. It wasn't even a games list reveal back in the early days. It was kind of it was handled much differently. Then they had a full-on committee, and the committee's been kind of a revolving door over the years. I know recently Darkman, who I believe was on the committee, he was on the credits, left the staff of GDQ, so they brought in at one point Munch Koopas, Brian Otto, and Liz Starr within the last few years, and that's also changed the committee and decisions that they've made. So, differing people have different approaches.
Yeah.
So past success isn't necessarily past picks doesn't necessarily indicate that they'll do something again in the future.
Yeah. I imagine when you have 1,500 something submissions, if you can just get one person on that committee who's just like, you know what? I'm just using it as an example. I'm not fighting for Mario Party, but someone on that games committee is just like, we need to do Mario Party. This would be sick. I think that has a lot of pull at the end of the day when like everybody kind of has to cover their different sections of the games list and whatnot. But with that, that's Zelda. Hope we're right. I have no investment in us being right, but it is good for the ego. Let's talk about Mega Man.
Magoo. So the real quick narrative on Mega Man is they've been doing less and less of it. I think the first online GDQ, they literally took one Mega Man game, as opposed to at their peak they were taking like 8.
Yeah. Which to be fair to Mega Man game, that means that's like 5 hours,
Yes, exactly.
But it is a lot of kind of a similar formula over and over and over again. And like Ghoul brought up, they were over-indexing in it, to where like it's probably the same crowd that was watching.
They also had a really bad habit of putting them all back to back to back.
Right.
If you don't know Mega Man, to like see the minute differences between games is a horrible idea.
So I think this kind of actually, I guess we'll get some themes going here, but like this kind of adds to the changing nature of a committee, because the reason it was indexed in the past, a word we're using a lot today, was because the people behind it really like Mega Man. Like if you look at SDA, Speed Demo's Archive in 2012, Mega Man was like everywhere because it's a really good speed run. That's not necessarily good to watch 6 hours in front of a casual audience with.
Right.
To be fair, the Mega Man community always had this 6 pages of incredible offers. It wasn't even, there were reasons they would index very heavily beyond even just, committee biases. They would have a world record offer from 1 through 6 and X 1 through 4, and you're just like, cool, we got to take some critical mass of these.
Yeah, but it's something where nowadays you would see, instead of 6 hours, you might see 2 or 3 hours. Even though it's really awesome, you still have to balance out. It's a lot of Mega Man,
right?
And we're seeing that with Zelda. We're seeing that with everything. It's good. It's a good thing that we're seeing this evolution.
Yeah, it's a very healthy progression for sure for GDQ and the games committee, in my opinion, for sure.
Things change for good reasons. It's awesome. Also for bad reasons sometimes. not applicable here.
Yeah, and the thing to also mention about Mega Man that I used to be in the camp of they over-index on this, and then I hosted 3 consecutive Mega Man runs at Calithon 2017. And the thing to note about this community, they always bring their A game.
They do.
Their performers, almost every Mega Man run ever has gone well as a performance, and their commentary is top notch. If you want to just point to any community in just terms of consistent quality commentary, Mega Man is one of the best that GQ has.
Yeah. And you know what? If I'm trying to put together a good show, when I just know the runners in the community are going to show up and they're going to knock it out of the park, I'm maybe going to reach a little bit more for certain games in that pile as opposed to something that I'm not nearly as certain about. And like I said, the Mega Man community, they always filled up the A couch, the B couch, the C's and the D's back there. They were all full. It was all about the D. We do have a couple of classic
Mega Man that we have.
Right.
Yeah. So Mega Man 5, this one just seemed to be the one that was the most in cycle, along with 6. It kind of was just a toss-up between 5 and 6, but we were leaning towards one of the NES ones. Peapot's a very good runner of 5. That brings your classic NES one. Mega Man 8, submitted by the Blacktastic, who was actually, I think, one of GDQ's most recent hosts. He's kind of one of the darlings of the marathon, just an all-around likable and very entertaining personality, who always brings it to marathons. 8 being the PS1 game, has a bit of a different look to everything. And then finally Mega Man Ultra is it's a souped-up version of Mega Man 2 that has Mega Man 11 and 10 kind of, abilities. It's a bit of a weird game. I don't know why it says an hour 40. This should have been just 37. That happened.
I was gonna say, I was like, I don't remember this being
No,
that long.
it's 30. It's 37 minutes. It's a typo.
Yo, we get the live feed that's with the
Oh,
switching
shit.
of the estimate. Hell yeah.
Thanks. Oh, okay, that's worrisome. Anyways, fucking
Just write fuck in there, dude. Just write.
fuck.
Just let the people know. We're here. This is the unofficial SGDQ games list show. But yeah, a couple of good Mega Mans right there. I think 3 games is honestly a good safe spot for us to land. I don't see them ever going back to being like, let's do 8 Mega Mans. But Mega Man has always been a little light the last couple of years. I feel like it's been light ever since we went online. And I think this is probably the strongest list they've had since then. So.
Yeah, the thing with Ultra is there's a lot. They tend to take like one hack, fan game, what have you. This was just kind of the one we landed on. There's a whole bunch of like good ones here, and the runner for this one is Kumba, who's done a few of these at the event, and they've usually gone over pretty well.
With that, moving on, chat, we got our next series right here. Let's move on to Castlevania. You like Castlevania, don't you? Well, someone in chat surely does, and we do. These are always great speed games, always great showcases, and they can pull from a lot of different sections of the series to get, unlike more, I think, like Mega Man games and whatnot, like kind of very different feels from each of them. And yeah, we got a stacked lineup. I'll start on the bottom. Super Castlevania 4. One of the greatest Super Nintendo games came out when, early on in the game's released. And we could potentially see a low percent race right here, adding a whole lot of new challenges and new dynamics to the run. Symphony of the Night, a game that used to be in every single GDQ for the first 10 years of the event, has now not been seen in 3 years. You got Dragon Blitz, kind of the classic Symphony of the Night runner, offering up a la carte all bosses, among a bunch of other categories. And Ghost King and O talking about Aria of Sorrow and Harmony of Dissonance right here. Some amazing GBA Castlevania offers.
Yeah, they actually haven't done just the straightforward Soma any percent in Aria of Sorrow. It's a bit of a weird category, but you have both the record holder offering for Aria of Sorrow and Harmony of Dissonance. It was kind of a toss-up. And I ended up just saying, I have a hard time picking between these two, so let's just go with both. It gives you a full, three, almost 4-hour Castlevania block with the setup time, so...
Yeah, I know Jupiter Climb, who I believe was just the runner of Circle the Moon that was just recently done, has kind of taken over a lot of the GBA Castlevania records and whatnot. So it was debatable we were even going to give him Aria of Sorrow, Soma Glitchless. But I do like this kind of middle ground we ended up with where, hey, we got the world record holder of both of these categories, and it shows something off a little different for Aria of Sorrow. Always a game that's had a healthy amount of showings in GDQs over the years. But yeah, got real Hall of Fame Castlevania lineup that you could have right there. Any other thoughts?
We don't even have any of the NES ones, which there were some solid offers for the NES ones as well.
Moving on, we'll save some time here as we now go on to Sonic. Oh, Idris Elba looking oh so sexy right there. I still haven't seen the movie. Chat, anyone who's seen it, let me know.
I have not yet either.
Is it good?
I have not seen it. Yeah.
Just type a yes or no.
It's the best video game movie. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
That is an incredibly low bar to clear.
It is, but it's still. Sonic 1 was good. So that's the bar. Was it better than Sonic 1? Maybe.
I didn't even see the first one yet.
It's
but
good.
yeah,
It's good. It's good.
So let's talk a little bit about Sonic. Now, I want to leave this up to you guys to talk a little bit about Sonic. I wasn't in the call when we were picking these out, but I think the one thing I will say about this is that I believe the 2 series that had the most offers out of anything for GDQ this year were actually Pokemon and Sonic. Each of those series had over 70 submissions apiece. So there is an incredible amount of just competition to get any of the Sonic games, and they've been knocking it out of the park the last couple of years. The Sonic runners always bringing the good energy and everything. You guys settled on these 5 runs. Tell me about them.
So
yeah, let's have Ghoul.
Okay,
You take it first. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, go for it, Ghoul. Ghoul, you spoke it first.
So it's a little complicated here. So we have the thing about Sonic is that for a long time they really struggled to get Genesis Sonic from high-level runners. That was kind of a theme for a long time. It's why we saw for a period of time in the mid 2010s, you saw just a ton of Sonic Advance, and they would try to rotate the 3D Sonics around. Then, relatively recently, they've actually had a really good amount of 2D Sonic, which means that a lot of those are kind of rotated and being, as we said before, when a game's in a lot recently, we kind of start to see it, fall out of the rotation a little bit. So those felt like they were out of season a little bit, which also means that, like, Sonic Advance 1, which we have as the first game on the list, is kind of back in season because it's been a while since it's shown up. Again, the last time we've seen was GDQX 2018, which I think was in part because Kirby, I think, had other runs at the event. Nice little 20-minute run there. I think before that, it hadn't been in since like 2016. It's about due for another showcase.
It's an easy character bid for.
We do still want to see a little bit of Genesis-style Sonic. We thought the best one there was Sonic Media Plus. It hasn't been in a super long time. Encore mode, I think, hasn't been showcased in even longer.
Since that race, yeah. And this is like the category to show off for Sonic Mania.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very, very cool category.
So then from there, we had to get a little bit weirder. We really liked a couple of the Sega Master System Sonic games. They don't do these very often, but they do them often enough, and there was such a glut of Sonic submissions that we were trying to look at all of them, trying to find what we thought was the best one. And Sonic Chaos ended up being a really entertaining launch by a very good runner. That's short enough where it really doesn't outlive the estimates. You don't have like the weird like Sega Master System jank.
Yeah, this one was by RGDQ, who offered a bunch of like good Sonic, and he's kind of really blown up for GDQ in recent events. So this was kind of just the one we landed on, but there's at least a few others that if we saw it, we'd be like, I am not shocked, and I do not feel bad for getting the call wrong.
Yeah. And this leads to then, we got to pick our 3D Sonic. Usually they do 1 to 2 of these. So we went with Sonic Colors Ultimate. They haven't done the port. It seems like it's about back in the rotation.
Yeah, it's probably also due for it's probably also due for a race because we have like 2 runners who are like within 9 seconds of each other submitting. So it'd be really cool if they did a race for this one.
Yeah. The other one we were really close on was Sonic Unleashed.
Yeah, that was like our last cut.
It was one of our last cuts. I think I personally was a little bit worried because they specifically mentioned USB loader in their pitch. Honestly, if they didn't put that in there, it would have been on the games list or our games list as like a prediction. It's just a little bit iffy. Don't shoot yourself in the foot with your submissions, everybody, please. I promise you, someone will find you a disc if you really need one. But so we went with Colors Ultimate. Just felt like a very safe, strong, classic 3D Sonic speedrun. Not too much more to say. And then what I think is one of the coolest runs, like submissions of the event, which is Broly Legs doing Sonic Adventure 2. So anybody that doesn't know, Broly Legs is a top-level Street Fighter player. I forget exactly what the condition is, but he plays Street Fighter with his face. He literally will, it's about what it sounds like it looks like. It is incredible. The fact that he can play these games at such high level is super cool. There's a great story to it, and I'm a little bit unsure of what commentary looks like for this, but it doesn't matter. This run is too cool, too unique. I think this is like a really good successor to like your blindfolded runs of the past.
And to be clear, that's him offering both Hero and Dark. Not necessarily a bid war. He would do them back to back, correct?
I think it's a little unclear. I think it's technically a bid war. I'm not even
or
sure.
Both. And or both. I'm not necessarily sure it says Hero or Dark.
Okay. I was like, damn, if he goes through each of those in 45 minutes apiece, like that.
I don't quite think that is, but either way, we just thought that this was an incredible like submission and just an incredible story in general to have. So his condition is I actually have the article up here, arthrogryposis, which effectively is a muscle deficiency. It involves like just your muscles just really don't grow as you get older. So it's just kind of a really like fascinating story of how just even through his like limitations, this dude is like really good at fighting games. He's pretty well known in the FGC. So to see him submit to a speedrun marathon, we thought, oh, this is really cool.
Super cool looking Sonic block. I'd be happy to see all of that show up. I'd like to see something on that higher end have 4, 5, 6 good Sonic submissions because, again, there were like over 70 of them. So know that this was like the cream of the crop that we had to pick out among a lot of cream. I don't know. That was kind of weird. Moving on. Bam.
Hey, that's the name of a character in the game.
Cream of the cream.
The cream of the cream. The cream of the cheese.
The one thing The one thing I will quickly say with Sonic though, there were years where they were getting like really, really good offers, and then they were taking like 3 or 4 games.
Right.
Finally, this last event, they took like 7 offers. It was a really good pluck of Sonic submissions, so I would not be surprised if they continue that, given it is the most represented series in the submissions.
Moving on here, we gotta go. Bam! Oh, there's so much pink on my screen. Oh my god. Other Nintendo. We're gonna be talking about the. Say what?
Apparently Kirby ate the slide.
Yeah, he a hungry little bastard. And chat for our ultimate prediction of the event: Kirby not getting into the marathon. It sucks. No, I'm just kidding. It's in. Kirby and the Forgotten Lands. If this didn't get in, my god, I'd be quite surprised. There's a couple of submissions on here that I'd be willing to put a mortgage down on that these get into the marathon, particularly sticking out Kirby and the Forgotten Lands, 80%, and Metroid Dread, any or 100%. In some way, Metroid Dread came out like as submissions were opening up for last SGDQ. Now it's time to finally give it its showcase along with Kirby.
I think to add in, we mentioned earlier the Zeldas were kind of like off season, like there's nothing new. Guess where all the new cool shit is for Nintendo? It's on this line.
Right. Yeah, on this slide
right
right here.
I will say, and this isn't necessarily a knock, but Kirby and the Forgotten Lands is about an hour and 50 minutes right now, which is usually they like their Kirby's more in the 40 minutes to an hour 15 range. Because it's new, I think it's going to be in there, but I think it is going to be a lot like a Tropical Freeze, where it's going to be a lot longer before this rotates back into season.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
This is the hottest the iron will be for this game, because this is probably the most hype Kirby has had in a very long time. The adoration for this game is like at its highest, and so like it's pretty much the reason why we only put 1 Kirby on here. Is this is about as much Kirby as they might take across like 3 games. I do expect maybe the estimate might come down a little bit more. The way the game is structured, I don't see it coming down like a ton, but like it was just originally 2 hours and it dropped to 150 because just, routing changes for a game that came out like, gosh, like 2 weeks before submissions closed.
Kirby's is what you're saying, right?
Yes. He mouthfuled all of the Kirby's.
Gotta get some Donk in there. We got Donkey Kong 64. This is one that it's now been a couple of years where I'm like, it's in season, right? It's in season, right? It's in season, right? It's been 5 damn years since they did any Donkey Kong 64. You got a really high level runner for the first time. No levels early in Donkey Kong 64. Kind of I don't want to say no major glitches. I mean, this game's busted as hell, but like, see most of the game category and no levels early.
They're 70 star, we'll call it.
Yeah, 70 star, sure. Yeah, it's like a broken 70 star. It just went sub 2 hours. I think they finally need to do this. Some solid DKC submissions in there as well, but yeah, I think we ended up settling on Donkey Kong 64 with how competitive this list ends up being. Other than that, Metroid Fusion, a little more Metroid to have in there since we only had Metroid Prime Hunters at this last GDQ. Could see them going a little bit more into the Metroid well, and then Luigi's Mansion with a big 100% race, probably a 100% as an incentive.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if... Sorry.
One small thing on Fusion is, again, they kind of rotated these in a lot early on. It was a big joke. They would take one of the Primes and then one of Fusion or Zero Mission and Super Metroid at every event. They backed off on that a lot, which means that Fusion really is kind of due for another showcase, just based on the way they tend to do these things.
I guess a bit of lore. Early GDQ days, it was all Saber Kill the Animals. That's what like most of the bids were. Yeah. And there was always a question of like, hey, if we don't do Super Metroid or you change the date, does the marathon not raise any money?
Right.
and the answer was in fact, no, it still does. Yeah, it's actually, it turns out when people will just donate to other things or not put it towards anything in particular. And that was just always a default donation. So like that's one of the reasons that Super Metroid was always so represented early on is, hey, is this a load-bearing game?
So, I remember there was also like. Go ahead.
Oh, just specifically on the Luigi's Mansion one. Yeah, we could see them doing any percent no out of bounds upgrade to 100%, or just any percent period. 100% is kind of the staple category for this game. It is like an extremely big game in the speedrunning community. I almost want to say for whatever reason, even though I kind of know the reason. Just has to do with kind of like the size of the runners. But they haven't done a race of this game since SGDQ 2015, which was kind of a legendary performance despite it being a bit of a blowout. So I think it would be just good to have, like, you know, two, maybe three of the top level runners of this game just finally give it a race showing for the first time in like 7 years.
One other small thing on that, I always joke with GK, it has the Magic GameCube logo on it as well. GameCube games make a lot of money for
They
GameCube.
do. That's the kids who grew up with GameCube are now they now have money.
They have money and they watch GDQ more than other demographics do. So that's a very magical logo to have for a game that could easily go for this showing.
All right, I'm sick of Nintendo. We've been talking about so much Nintendo. Let's get into some other series like Batman with a Gun. He looked angry. I don't know where you found this pic. Where is it? That's got to be official. It's great.
Google.
It's all Google. Shouts to Ghost King for throwing this slideshow together. So there are nice pictures.
This is the category that has Elden Ring, but we get the Batman with a gun.
But we got Batman with a gun, dude.
Oh, you'll see what I did for Elden Ring next slide.
Yeah, what did you do? Yo, it's your boy. Let me solo her. That's gonna get it done. Look at my man in the undies and the double katanas. Let's go, baby.
I would not be shocked if a player name donation incentive exists for this game, and that ends up being what gets donated.
Could you believe if Let Me Solo Her was like a speedrunner and they offered, they'd be like, we have to take it. We must do this, my gosh. But yeah, there's our legend in there. I love how much that blew up on the internet. So we got the first of 2 slides here worth of action games. Kind of, you know, one of our first, I would say, like almost miscellaneous categories. But yeah, a lot of action adventure games here, including stuff, like you said, Elden Ring. Obviously, another one of the massive submissions with Kirby. That kind of came out just before game submissions opened up. And once again, there's no way they're not going to do this. I definitely see the avenue that they would go down would be All Remembrances, which is basically the all major bosses category. It's the sweet spot where they'd want to show it with an any % incentive that would raise $500,000, literally, to showcase how that game can be beaten in like 6 minutes. So, yeah.
That's the problem with any percent is that it's so short it can't be the mainstay. It
Right.
can't be the primary thing you watch. But like, yeah, make it cost money and then just put in some more Elden Ring, baby. You got the world in front of you.
Yeah, the one thing with that category is there's a submission for any % and a submission for any % unrestricted. One is like 25 minutes, and one is like 7. So we don't know which of the two that they'll end up doing. I would wager the 25 minutes because they want to get as much money out of this game as they can right now.
Right.
But
I could see all 3 being done because they are all very different.
I wouldn't be shocked. Yeah, it's a lot of money on the table.
It's like if you were told, I can beat Elden Ring in 25 minutes. That's already mind-blowing. Like, all right. Now I'm going to do it in 7 minutes. And it's a completely different way, a completely different set of glitches and everything that allow them to literally just zip their way across the map and finish it off. This game was busted within like 12 hours. It was great. Some other ones on here, I guess, worth pointing out. You got like Grand Theft Auto Vice City Definitive Edition down there. It's actually been a couple years since we saw some GTA Vice City, a game that defined a generation of gaming back in the PS2 era. Always a fun take for them. Ghost Runner, this game's just sick. It was last... oh, wait. Is this... Oh, the category is new. That's what... Okay.
It's a DLC. So that's the big thing is it's a... Ghost Runner is one of those games where it is literally just fast movement. It made for speedrunning essentially, but like it's easy to see what's going on. It's very visually impressive for a non-runner. So like getting DLC to it and just having someone run that fits perfectly for the marathon. I'm also gonna add it's the definitive edition of Vice City, which came out last year, I think after the SGDQ submission. And that release was it's not a good release. It's a bad release actually. It's a very bad release. Which for speedrunning, a popular game, is extremely good.
Yeah, and I see it all busted. It comes pre-busted for runners to get to utilize.
I don't know a lot of the bugs, but essentially, like, it came out and it's just like, hey, yeah, sometimes the physics don't work. Hey, sometimes your character will just die. The cars will fly. Like, just GDQ or Grand Theft Auto games are always a little broken, but you have to usually work your way. This is just like, nah, this car's gonna drive away without a driver, and you're not gonna care. You just do it. I'm excited to see that.
We had a lot of really good both Batman Arkham series submissions and Devil May Cry submissions. We ended up settling on, it's been 4 years since they did Arkham Asylum. Arkham Asylum and City are definitely the two standouts from that series in terms of just nostalgia people have for them, how well received they were. So seeing Arkham Asylum, I know this is a lot lower than it was in the past. This used to be like a 2-hour run. Now it's like an hour. So interested to see how busted that is now. And Devil May Cry here in the all collectibles normal category. Devil May Cry's had about a submission get in about every year, maybe 2 out of 3 events or so.
I will say I would not be shocked to see Arkham Knight as another one of those keep your eye on it games. I know there's a lot of issues with the car in particular slowing down the speed run, but the game sold a gazillion copies and is well received if you played it on PlayStation and on PC. So I would not be shocked to see that one get in eventually, but for now the safer pick for sure is Asylum here.
And we got a whole second page here with memes. We got memes, the DNA of the soul. We got a Ghost King, just tell me.
I saw Revengeance get submitted and I popped the hell off. This game is like eternally relevant. It keeps coming up and people will, like, ironically enough, meme the shit out of that game to this day. When fucking Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, which sadly was not offered, but when it came out in all of its ridiculous, people were saying it was this generation's Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. There's like incentives to have fucking quotes from the game. Like, I don't know, there's got to be at least like 2 cutscenes you could donate for in this fucking game. It is the most ridiculous thing. And we also have Metal Gear Solid 2, which we think is the most in
season
in-cycled Metal Gear Solid game, because they just closed on Metal Gear Solid 1 and they did 3 not super long ago. So we think 2's probably good to have. So you have the back-to-back Raiden games. The Metal Gear Solid and then the meme Gear Rising, I guess.
The juxtaposition.
Raiden's ass.
Yeah.
Raiden's ass.
It hasn't been in since AGDQ 2015. It was a new game category that they did in 2014, and then a DLC in 2015. So it's been a while, and I think it's finally time to be back in this event itself.
Yeah, I wonder if it just always got blocked by the kind of the main series Metal Gear Solid games, even though like this is a very different feel than that. It happens to have Metal Gear slapped on it. This is a completely different game, and honestly such a cool speedrun to watch. It's crazy to think it's been 7 years since it got in. Other than that, filling out the list, we got Lost Judgment on here. The Yakuza series has been pretty big at the last couple of GDQs, Ghost King.
Yeah, so this one's actually a bit weird to talk about. The thing with the Yakuza games is all the games that they have taken are in the Dragon engine, which is specifically Kiwami 2 and Yakuza 6 and Lost Judgment. The main story. This is a new DLC that came out, so it's kind of GDQ does really like their continuity, so I could see them just taking the DLC. So you have like popular Yakuza game, just darn, I'm saying it the way you do. It's Yakuza, but they take an hour of it, so they don't have to commit to a lot of it. They could still do Kiwami 1. It'd be a bit of a reach, I think, for Yakuza 0, just because it's so much longer. It is the most popular of the bunch, but like at 4 hours, it's a lot for an action game when they usually don't do more than like 2.5 for an action game. That's not Zelda, if you count that. So this one just ended up being the one that I landed on. I wouldn't be surprised if they did Kiwami or 0, but those are in like an earlier engine that I imagine is like it's not quite as visually appealing, so that's just why we landed on this one.
I'll hand the last of these off to each of you. So you talked about Lost Judgment. Studio, tell me a little bit about the Hitman series. It's been doing pretty well at GDQs, actually. It's kind of one of those like solid middle of the pack games in the marathon.
So the secret to every Hitman game is that they are all comedy gold.
They're so good.
If you play Hitman your first time through, it's a little silly sometimes. You get into some wacky situations, but it's pretty much a very standard game. Blood Money, I'd say, was the first Hitman that GDQ really leaned into for just how funny it was, with like Coddy's runs, I believe, and St. Million as well. And so like it's been a long time. It's a very fun run. They just went through I believe the recent main series Hitmen. And Blood Money, the levels are a little bit longer, and I think instead of you get a lot of fast wacky action with the more recent Hitman. With Blood Money, it's these slow, sometimes drawn out, but like very absurd plot lines with a lot of stuff going on. Slow is almost the wrong word because you're always doing something, but it'll take like a minute and 3 explosions will go off, a bunch of people will die, and then the hitman guy will be throwing coins as he like disembarks on a boat. It all combines really well. Like it's a very fun run.
One of my favorite runs of this I think it was HGDQ. It was either HGDQ or SGDQ last year. Was a Hitman run that I got home at like 2 in the morning and I saw it and I said, these are. If you've never watched a Hitman run, chat, you will not have had to play them. They are hilarious. They're good watches. And then finally, Ghoul, I said it earlier, we're usually like, we'll let them surprise us. We'll let them surprise us. Why are we not letting them surprise us? And we're saying, Okami HD, they're going to do it, damn it.
Well, first of all, this is in the wrong category. This is a Zelda.
This is part of the Zelda. I'm sorry. We'll back split. We'll go back.
I put this in our Zeldas, by the way, when we're doing our categorization for runs that we look at, for the record.
So Okami's a strange one, because everyone that plays this game really likes it. And it's, a lot of people will jokingly call it their favorite Zelda game. That's only partly a joke. But it's a very strange game because it hits a lot of unique demographics. It's a Capcom game, so people that are really into Marvel vs. Capcom, know and love Amaterasu for that. It was originally a PlayStation exclusive, so it hits a little bit of that PlayStation nostalgia. The weird thing about Okami for a long time has been that you could never do a new game run because there was no way to skip cutscenes until the port, on the Switch, which says you can now skip cutscenes. And we're like, oh cool, they get to finally do the new game because they've done this New Game Plus twice, and they really want to do a new game run of this, and they just can't do it because the new game was 8 hours because you had to watch all these freaking cutscenes over and over again. Well, now they have the new game with cutscene skips, and they haven't done the run. And it's like...
This was the layup of the century, come on!
At some point, this has to get done. So, I think, especially because we have a shorter Zelda set, I think because of the way it is, and I'm going to keep, you guys are going to, get mad at me because I'm going to keep wanting to predict this until they finally take it.
We're going to lose 2 hours on every one of our prediction schedules every time. No,
So what you're saying, Ghoul, is this is your typing of the dead.
Eventually, I'm going to be right on this, and it's going to be this event.
Just keep shooting, Tex. Just keep shooting.
As an aside on that matter, it was funny how every show we would predict Typing of the Dead to come back. Every time it would show up on our list, and then finally this past SGDQ, when we don't even have enough submissions to do this show, they put it on the backup list. It gets in the main marathon, so we finally don't have Typing of the Dead on here.
I
don't think anyone even offered it.
We'll see you in 5 years for the next time. It's always great. It's up there with Hitman. It's hilarious. All right, well, we talked a lot about action right there. Let's move on. Our next thing, we've got horror block right here. Oh, it's Mr. X. He's looking dummy thick right there. And he's bringing in one of a ton of horror submissions. This is another category that in GDQs over the years, it used to be for a long time, there was a Resident Evil, there was a Silent Hill, and then there was something else. And I feel like this has seen an increase. There's just so many goddamn horror submissions that get offered every year. It's hard to sift through all of them. How did we settle on this set right here? I'll start off with Amnesia Rebirth.
They haven't done this one.
Yep.
It's a big name horror series. They haven't done Rebirth, so it was pretty quick. Dead Rising 2, they, like I've mentioned, they like their community. I mean, they like their community, I would hope. They like their continuity. They just did Dead Rising 1 time skip for the first time. I think they were opposed to doing a modded version of the game for a while, but they did time skip by Ecdysis. It went over very well, so we'll do Dead Rising 2. I believe Off the Record was offered as well. It could be either one of these. We've kind of leaned on 2. It was a bit of a shorter run, a bit more of a known commodity.
The Off the Record is considered a better game, but much fewer people played it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like Shasta saying, Dice is definitely one of those that just, when they show up, it's always going to be a good showcase of these different games. So yeah, I think it's a good follow-up. GDQ does like to do their follow-up submissions. kind of afterwards. All right, that one was a hit. Let's give them a second helping and then move on.
That one was so great. Let's do it again.
Yep.
Basically.
Studio, talking a little bit about Outlast 2. This is the first time this has ever actually been done in a marathon.
Yeah, so
GDQ.
like Outlast is one of those games that's kind of massive. Like for horror, if Outlast 2 didn't have as big a splash, but like it still had a large splash. So it's a horror game that will get a lot of people watching it. It has good atmosphere. It's also very silly, as most horror speedruns end up being, since you can't really maintain a tense atmosphere as you run around and skip through stuff. So it has a notoriety to like and name behind its brand to like last that time. It's still interesting enough to actually fill it as well.
Ghoul. This is probably the single most interesting take on our entire list. No idea if they're going to take this or not, but it was so interesting we had to put it on there. Phasmophobia. What the hell is this?
So this is a game where you get with your friends and you all get on there and you go into a house that is haunted by a ghost, and you have to determine what kind of ghost it is. And you know, different ghosts do different things. So one of them might leave fingerprints if you do it. Another one might be like, oh, this one will freeze the room. You know, the room will get a lot colder when it's around. Like, you know, all these like different traits for the ghost, and you have to like kind of diagnose what the randomized ghost is inside of these houses and fill out your sheet. If you get it right, you get in-game money to spend on more items, which you can go spend to find other ghosts. This is a very fun run to watch, but it's also kind of strange. So first of all, like I personally, I really enjoy watching Phasmophobia. If you ever like get bored, it's definitely like just find someone streaming this game on occasion, and it'll be entertaining regardless. But as a run, it's odd because they have to have a bunch of rules to prevent this from becoming a Where's Waldo. For anybody that doesn't know what Where's Waldo is, there's a Where's Waldo speedrun that's very famous because you just, to do it quickly, you mash into the game and then you pick the first 3 options until that's the right answer. And you could technically do that on this. So there's like these like weird speedrun rule sets that are like a little bit overly complicated, and it might be a little hard to follow with the 4 streams, but like this just looks fun to me. Brossentia is one of the runners, and Brossentia is always entertaining.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I think decided us putting on this one is how fucking massive this game is. This game blew up around the time the games like Among Us and Fall Guys were in like the early, like, you know, the late summer of 2020 when everyone was still shut indoors because of the pandemic.
To add context to it, I said Outlast was like a relatively known game, and it has like a 6th of the Steam reviews, a 7th of it.
Right.
And there's a rule of thumb some people use and it's very, very inaccurate. It's essentially, you know, you can pop this for quick estimations. Every review is 50 people have played the game, just because so many people don't review. And Phasmophobia has 345,000 reviews. So to bust out that bad, like using that, it's like 15 million. It might be less. It might be more. This is a really well-known game that, even with goofy rules around how they solve, might actually be. There might be enough people that have watched it and played it to follow it very effectively.
Let's look at viewers regardless, basically.
Yeah. I think at 40 minutes, for as massive as this game is at 345,000 reviews, I think you let Brossentia and friends go at it and see what happens. Again, we'll see. It might just be a little too weird and out there for GDQ, but it is a massive game. And you get busted seats. They'd watch it. Other than that, we do have our classic games, our Resident Evil and our Silent Hill series. Resident Evil, we said fuck it. We just went for it and said, Bakba Soup, one of the biggest speedrun streamers on Twitch, doing the original Resident Evil 1, 2, 3 trilogy coming your way. They actually haven't done these 3 games in general in 3+ years. And we just thought this would probably be the coolest showcase of it. They don't generally do series runs like this. They've done them a few times with like Elder Scrolls and Fallout. But yeah, I don't know. I think Bakba would do an amazing job showcasing all 3 of them in a relatively short 2-hour, 40-minute time frame.
There's kind of like a perfect storm of stuff on this one, in my opinion. First of all of these games have been out for a pretty sizable period of time. They've done a lot of remakes, a lot of newer stuff. They just haven't done the original games in a while. So you combine that with all the other games that have obviously been done a lot more recently. So you have like these 3 games. They like doing these every now and then. And again, it's the same runner doing this. And again, he streams very regularly to 2,500 people whenever he does stuff like this. It's hard to not picture this going well. It is just a matter of they could also just do one of these or a lot of other interesting things for sure. Go ahead, GK.
A lot of RE. There's a lot of RE offers. They just did Village. We weren't in love with like the follow-up offers. It's also just a really long game, so I don't see them going right back to it. They'll get back to it eventually, but they just did like the big glitchless fantasy 2-hour category for it. There was DLC for RE7, which caught my eye personally, but that, we just decided our Resident Evil was going to be just all 3 of these. Big established runner has been like a known commodity for GDQ, and all of these games, they haven't been in quite a while. I mean, there's been remakes, but like that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those where one thing that makes this a little awkward is that some people might say, oh, why don't they just have Bachma do one of the 3? He actually did not offer any of these individually. He swung for the moon. He said, all right, here are our 3 games. I did not offer them just do 1, just do 2, just do 3. So we were kind of in an awkward spot. They're definitely going to do some sort of Resident Evil here. Almost always gets into a marathon. And we said maybe this is the time for it. And then finally, Silent Hill 2, the most popular game in the series, being offered here by Punchy. Always a popular showing when it is thrown in there. So yeah, that's horror. I'm scared. I'm spooked. And you know what else is scary? Whoa! We got Crash Bandicoot right here because it's time to talk a little bit about the PlayStation series. Generally, something that's had 3 or 4 submissions get in all the different. Obviously, there are lots of PlayStation games, but these are kind of the classic, especially platformers that you think about when you think PlayStation. And here's our showcase. Ghost King, I know you looked into a lot of these. I think you and Ghoul in particular. And I think there's some absolute bangers on this list, including I'll knock out Crash 2. Was supposed to be in the last marathon, ended up dropping at the last second. 100% Crash 2. You can't get a better speed game than this. Absolutely fantastic. Got 3 other bangers right here afterwards.
Yeah, Little Big Planet. They actually took like the trilogy over a span of like 2 years, back between 2016 and 2018. Haven't done it in a while. Quite a popular game. Really cute. So I just figured, you know, they might just go back to this one. Wreck All Bolts. They did just do New Game Plus for this game. We think they'll just go to all gold bolts. That seemed like the strongest Ratchet and Clank submission for us. I mean, there's a few others that they could do. A lot of the other games had also been in fairly recently, but this is kind of like the established, like it's the first game in the series. This is like a longer, bigger category. They haven't done it in 5 years. And Ratchet seems to be like the darling of the PlayStation set. Like they'll do a Crash or a Spyro, like, but they'll tend to, you know, pass on it for like one event. Ratchet and Clank is like the only one that they've actually done like 2 games of multiple times in recent years.
And then you've got Sly Cooper and the Thaddeus Raccoonus. I would love for this to get a showcase. I think Sly 1 is such a cool speed game. There's a lot of cool speed games in the Sly series. They're just, the other ones are like 4+ hours long. But this one you were talking about, first time they would have ever done all vaults, which is the like, the reasonable 100% category that they could show off at a marathon like this.
Yeah, so 100% in this game is really freaking cool. It was one of the like speed runs that really won me over back when I first started like really getting into this hobby. I didn't actually do it, but like I was watching, I believe Surreal was the runner at the time, ran 100%. All vaults is 100% except for the time trials, which take up a pretty sizable chunk. What it is you collect all the bottles in every level and you get to each vault. This category is slightly longer than the all keys category, which they did a few years back. But this seems like the best way to do things. So one of the powers you get out of one of the vaults is a thing that lets you play the game in 1.5 times speed. Watching this in action is really freaking cool. Thankfully it doesn't speed up the music, which, you know, that just feels like emulator fast forward at that point. But like you play the game like fast forwarded and it completely changes the dynamic of the run. So this ended up being the category that I was just like immediately like I really want this in. Yeah, it is a bit of a shame like that the other games in this series are so long. I know Ricky actually recently did one of the chapters for the game for Slide 2 at ESA and it was like 40 minutes. I would be cool if they did that. There was a lot of those submissions in the pool of submissions here.
Yeah, just
It's
doing
just
chapter 1 or chapter 4.
it was
yeah.
hard to predict, and I don't know like which one is necessarily the best one for like, you know, this one has like the best tech, and it's also just kind of like weird to do like a mid portion of the story. So I don't see GDQ necessarily doing that. I wouldn't dislike if they finally did that at some point though.
Yeah, definitely on that list of let GDQ surprise us. Like, generally, they like full game runs, but there are some exceptions here and there. All right, PlayStation, some of my favorite stuff. Hopefully, all that gets in there. I want to see all 4 of those runs right there. Big fan. Other 3D platformers, we got a T-pose right here. I'm getting to see a lot of these slides for the first time. This is good. My boy, giving away that we do believe there will be some Super Monkey Ball, among a bunch of other things. We'll probably start getting into the categories where we can kind of pick and choose which of these to talk about getting in. Yeah, I mean, off that list, definitely jumping out at me. Like I say, Super Monkey Ball Gaiden, which is, if you've never heard of it, it's probably because it's ROM hack.
Yep. They haven't done one of these in quite some time, so it'd be cool to have it just be your variants. The problem with Monkey Ball ROM hacks is they're like, sometimes they tend to like just look very skeletal, if that makes sense. Like, you'll have like the level, but like the backdrop will just be kind of really basic. This ROM hack just actually looked really cool, and it also, like, one of the other issues with Monkey Ball ROM hacks sometimes is they'll like have it be like a really narrow kind of pathway, and so like the speed tech doesn't actually look super different from like how like a good player would play this normally. It's actually kind of like paradoxical, because like you watch a Super Monkey Ball run to watch how somebody's going to do a level in a way that like you just never would have thought possible. This seems to be like the best ROM hack of the bunch for like speed tech that looks interesting, that also doesn't look like something that somebody who's like okay at Monkey Ball would immediately think to do.
Some other ones on here. Beautiful Katamari. Literally, I'll always sit down and watch a Katamari run. First time they will have ever showcased Beautiful Katamari if it gets in. I believe Harutomo, who just ran Katamari at this last GDQ, would potentially come back for a second appearance for the series. Got Covert Muffin on here, offering up Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast. And these are always a blast to watch as well. Just super, super fast movement. Never played this game, doesn't matter. You'll definitely enjoy it. And one other that I'll point out on this group, myself at least, would be Knight's Try. This could have been in the silly block. This game looks hilarious. And
it's
actually
also
fun at
Teddy
20
Ross.
minutes.
It's also Teddy Ross doing it, and Teddy Ross just he's one of those runners that like every run he gets, there's at least a few people who say, yo, this was like my favorite run of the marathon, because his commentary is just this like dry deadpan humor that's just it's Teddy's a funny guy, and every game he runs, you're just like, how do you find these games, Teddy? Real quick, Tupac, Pac-Man World 2. That's really what people call this game, is Tupac.
I believe.
This hasn't been in 4 years. I believe it's like 2 top level runners. I believe KD4 has the record and submitted, so I'm expecting to see that one. They've done Pac-Man World 1 twice, so this would be a natural kind of like do this one again, because it's been a while. And it's just a really cool speed game in general. Solar Ash. This was the latest game by the developer of Hyper Light Drifter, a game that GDQ I think put in like 3 times in the main event. I know one of their games committee members is like a huge fan of this game. Not that I think that necessarily would push it in, because as far as I understand, people like the staff members don't comment on their own submissions, but like that usually says to me it's a fairly known commodity within the games committee, and it's just a really cool speed game in general.
Ty the Tasmanian Tiger?
Yeah.
Think it's coming back finally?
So this one is a bit of a touchy one to talk about. The last time this run was in, it didn't go over pretty well for varying circumstances. There was like a category that there was like an incentive that they didn't handle the best. Yeah, so it's because of that, I feel like this game has kind of been shelved probably longer than I would have expected otherwise. And I do think that at some point they will take this game again. It's gotten a lot faster. The tech in this game is just generally interesting. So, yeah, we'll see this one. I think they'll see this one get back in eventually, and I'm hoping that, like, might be this event.
With that, lot of awesome platformers offered up. There's just a sample size of all the submissions for it. Now let's get into the longer runs of the marathon. Let's get comfy. Time to talk about Pikachu. We're talking about a little bit of Pokemon right here. Like I said with the Sonics earlier, over 70 submissions for the series, over 70 submissions for Pokemon as well. And with all that, we had to pare this sucker down to 2 video games. Ghost King, Ghoul, this is y'all's block. Tell me about it.
It's actually really simple for this one. It is the 2 newest games, the any percent really, really busted category of Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, which can be done in about 15 minutes, and Legends Arceus, which is probably the most well-liked Pokemon game amongst the fandom in quite some time. I wouldn't even be shocked to see if they did any percent glitched as like an incentive to tack on to an any percent glitchless run of Brilliant Diamond. However, that would mean 9 hours of Pokemon, which that seems a lot even for their more recent trends of taking 2 games. I also wouldn't be shocked to see like some other third game. One of the ones we were high on was Elite Four Round 2, Fire Red. At some point, like Black White 2 will be back in circulation. Like, there's a whole lot of things it could do, but these were the 2 that we were most convinced on.
Yeah, I think if they were gonna add one, I would have gone with the Elite Four Round 2 of Fire Red. It's such a good Pokemon speed run. And the nice thing about it, as opposed to most other Pokemon speed runs, is just how much it really feels like you're playing Pokemon. Because again, you have to get that 60 Pokemon requirement. Most Pokemon speed runs, you find your main smashes all the way to the end. You maybe pivot one time over the course of the run. Fire Red, you got to get those 60 Pokemon somehow, and it totally changes how you play the game.
Yeah, that's always been one of my favorite categories, just from a viewer's perspective on the outside, seeing that routing on the fly, because you figure it's going to be a relatively fluid process every time. I caught this Pokemon here, maybe I won't catch a different one later on, kind of seeing how the catch rates and the encounter rates kind of fall into your lap right there. But we'll see. Again, recently with GDQs, they've actually been more into doing like even 2 full-on Pokemon runs. So I would not be shocked. Again, though, Arceus is going to be a little bit of a bigger time slot at over 4 hours. So we'll have to see. But yeah, this was a pretty easy one to predict.
Legends Arceus is still like, it's for as long as it is, it still feels like a lock. This game sold like 6 million copies in like a week. It's also the first Pokemon game that's like, it takes a very different approach to how you actually play the game.
It's got a dodge roll.
It's a dodge roll. It's a pseudo-action RPG at times. It's a very weird game in some ways relative to the rest of the series, but because it's so popular, I don't see any world that they don't take this.
It'd be like a apocalyptic hell world, like
Right.
hotels destroyed by a meteor, but like
I love the
we don't plan for that.
That's pretty much up there with like Metroid Dread and a few others for like locks of the marathon. But Pokemon, they're cute. We're gonna watch them. That'll be great. Let's talk a little bit about fuck. They'll pay for this. Let's talk about the other RPGs that are not Pokemon, because Pokemon has to get its own thing. And this is always a doozy. Your game's prediction list is either going to look amazing if you nail this category because it's so many hours, or you're horribly wrong. Ghost King, Ghoul, I'm going to blame y'all if these are all horribly, horribly wrong. Y'all picked FF15. What the fuck? It's getting done.
Alright, so real quick, as Spike was saying, it is really hard to predict this category. After we did our first rounds of cuts, we had to cut down about half of the runs. When we started slashing through RPGs, we cut out probably like half of the minutes we needed to cut. It's like a quarter of the minutes total that we had in our like first rounds of cuts.
Let's do the easy stuff first. Deus Ex, they tend to do one of these pretty much every 2 out of every 3 events will have a Deus Ex. It's in rotation. It's about time to do this one again.
Yeah.
Fallout 3, I don't think we need to say too much. Same for, yeah. It's a massive game by a massive developer. People love it. All quests is very short. Not too much to say. Gauntlet 4, they tend to do a gauntlet every now and then. 4-player co-op sounds great. Sounds like a great excuse to have something like this at a live event. If they want to have the live fun event, it fits very well in what we're going for. Kingdom Hearts Final Remix. been a while since they've done this. They could do this any percent proud with a level 1 incentive. I don't know which one they do, because when you're on level 1, you don't have scan. I really wish you could just hack that in.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem. So to note, with the game now on Epic Game Store, they have made mods like that. It's literally just level 1 with a scan in it. Like, they made all sorts of like gummy skip mods and all this different stuff. But I agree, like GDQ should be like, you can use that mod because it is a better viewing experience. Moving on.
It just helps so much with viewing when you know how something's going to die.
Yeah,
let's go ahead and jump on to the next slide. We'll talk Final Fantasy at the end.
Yeah.
Mass Effect, again, Western RPG. They tend to be shorter. Very popular game. Just got a remaster very recently as well. Lots of people played it. Hasn't been done in a little while. I think this category is technically new as well. I'm not very up to date on the Mass Effect speedrunning, so this might actually be a new category. Elder Scrolls Morrowind. Don't need to say much. 25 minutes all main quest. They do this every now and then. It's been 3 years. Undertale. It's been a while. Feels like it's probably about time for them to do it again. This could be pretty much anywhere in the event. It's going to make a ton of money.
Yeah, and Shay obviously just popped off at this past GDQ, so giving him another run, probably a good thing to do. Now, the big enchiladas. I'm going to go fill up on water.
So traditionally, they have done a Final Fantasy at almost every event.
Yeah, and if not Final Fantasy, they do Chrono Trigger, which is very adjacent.
And the weird thing about that is they've done a lot of the longer ones recently. They did 7, 8, 9. They've done, I want to say they've done 6 relatively recently as well.
They haven't done 6 in a while, but the only offers for 6 were a randomizer, which we weren't as sure about.
So regardless, it's kind of, we're in a weird spot for taking longer Final Fantasies. So then we're looking and we're saying, okay, what do they do there? So there's 4 Pixel Remaster, which I think is just a little bit awkward. I feel like you'd still probably want to do SNES over Pixel Remaster for 4 specifically. Just the tech is so much more developed for it. You have the legacy skill carrying over from the free Enterprise randomizer that I think people are so used to seeing, thanks to stuff like the Limit Break tournaments and the showcases on GDQ and such. That didn't really seem like the likely take. So there were 3 takes that I thought were the most likely if they were going to do a Final Fantasy, and I actually wouldn't be shocked if they didn't do any of the 3. One of them was Final Fantasy X with a cutscene skip, which is a relatively recent phenomenon. I just wasn't sure if the runner caliber was there. It's such a new thing that hasn't really stabilized yet. I feel like they could just wait a little bit before they do Final Fantasy X. And I think it'll make a ton of money at an AGDQ as well, so I feel like them waiting on it makes a little bit more sense. Which then left us with the other 2, which GK and I fought back and forth for this like a gazillion times, which was 13.2 and 15.
Yeah, so they really like their continuity, and I think 13.2 is the better received game. 15 is a much more talked about game, I think, in recent times. Its reception is a little bit middling, but there's definitely like a subset of the Final Fantasy fandom that is just hardcore big fan of this game.
This might be me getting lost in the sauce a little bit as well. I am very big into the Final Fantasy trading card game. I swear the second most common deck that people ask to build after a Final Fantasy VII deck is a Final Fantasy 15 deck, and I am not being like sarcastic at all.
It is the newest of the main series. Just people, that's a lot of people might be their first one. Who knows? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think at 4 hours and 20 minutes for a game that sold 10 million copies is just it feels like something they could do and should do at some point. And you have Kios, who's done this in marathons. This is the 3rd most viewed run of the Limit Break it was in, behind Pokemon Crystal and Final Fantasy VIII. Like, the names it's getting next to on view counts on other channels are so high. I can't see them not doing this, and it stayed in the public eye so much better than Final Fantasy 13-2, and there's not a reason to do 13-2. They didn't just recently do 13, I don't think. Like, I think it's like taking an event off from 13, so like, they're not gonna like say we have to do 13-2 because we just did 13. So my getting lost in the sauce led me to believe that 15 is the most likely Final Fantasy they would do.
And then we get to talk about probably our hot take of this entire thing, which is Xenoblade Chronicles. This was another one we went back and forth on. I think that they're going to do 2. I don't particularly care which one that they do. They might do Chronicles 1, which is the longest submission of the bunch. It's also this would be the original version of the game. The one that sold the most was the definitive edition. The original version of the game, it looks fine for a Wii game, but the character models are a bit infamous for not being as nice looking as the other ones. 2 is a better selling game, but has a bit more of a mixed reception. I don't know. They're having like top runners offer for that. For like record holder for any percent no DLC for 2. Record holder for Xenoblade 1 is offering. Record holder for Xenoblade Torna offered glitchless. They put that on the backups list, which says to me that they have been seriously considering this, and they moved 3 up to release in late July this year. The hype for this series has never been higher, and it will be even higher once we get to that. The fact that they would take an experimental run like a Golden Sun and have it go over well suggests to me that they're heavily considering these kinds of things. So I'm not particularly invested in which one gets in. I just think that they will have something with the word Xenoblade on it at this event, and if not, I will actually be kind of surprised.
Yeah, again, I would not predict this if it wasn't for the Golden Sun effect, where Golden Sun went over so well and made so much money. They did Golden Sun 2.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they're not doing Golden Sun 3, I don't think. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But, like, that's to me is the committee has seen at this point that taking these slightly smaller JRPGs with just absolutely ludicrous levels of, fan enjoyment, like a Xenoblade, a Golden Sun. I feel like they're going to really start reaching for these a little bit until they start proving them wrong. They shouldn't do this. I think the other candidate that came close on this slot was Dragon Quest XI on PC, the 11S. I would not be shocked to see that in over Xenoblade, just because I think it's a little bit tricky what category you take for Xenoblade. I like the original best. I think the 50 hertz thing is really funny. So it adds a little bit of like a comedy, like this like really cool tech element to the run while also being kind of funny. Shulk is clearly running faster than he should be when he's running across this stuff. I love the grind method in this run. It's one of my favorite RPG grinds of all time. And it's short enough where that's not a problem, I don't think. It's very hard to predict what this slot ends up being. And I feel like they're going to do this again because it went over so well with Golden Sun 1 and 2.
Yeah, it definitely, if you are someone who offers these like middling, and it's relative for RPGs, these middling length RPGs that are beloved, the Golden Sun games getting in is like the best thing you could have seen. This is like in the ballpark, something like a couple years ago, I love Chrono Cross. I would have said Chrono Cross is never getting done in a GDQ. Now it's like, okay, maybe Xenoblade is the next stepping stone, the next one that should get that pick. And like you said, the hype's going to be high. Xenoblade 3. We talked a lot about the RPGs. Let's move on to our next big category. Get Studio in here to talk a little bit about Master Chief. And he's awake. We're done with the Pokemon and RPGs. Time to talk about Shooty McGun-Guns.
Okay, so actually I really like how this ended up working out alphabetically, because this first page of the shooters is kind of the more traditional older games, and this is a very interesting set of submissions this marathon, where I think a lot of like classic boomer shooters is the term, Doom likes, Quake likes, weren't really offered as much, but there were lots of kind of newer variants that were very cool. In terms of like big shooters, they were there, but not as common. Like, I wasn't going through like a million BioShock games going, which one do I pick up? I was going through a million kind of like classic big shooters going, which one do we take? So it was interesting kind of building a list based off that. I think going through there, BioShock, it's a game that comes up every couple marathons. Blood Thunder does good runs. It's a very, very solid, straightforward run that's also been shaved off in time recently. I think there's about 10 minutes less in the run. So cooler, faster, or popular game, faster run, very easy to slot in. Borderlands 2, kind of the same thing, where Borderlands is one of those games that is absolutely massive. Everybody remembers it, everybody recognizes it, and people really do like the co-op runs. I think co-op is kind of the runners really have fun playing the game with Borderlands 2. That's the vibe you want to see with a game like that. It's very colorful, everybody's kind of vibing, having a good time, and it's a good atmosphere. Control, I think this was a newer category, which is kind of why I slotted it in. I'm not as familiar with the game, but it was also a runner that had like a really kind of grounded, had a very good time on this category. Control is a game that I also don't know as well because I haven't played it, but I've seen a lot of the run. and based off how popular the game is, and based off kind of how cool the game is just on its own, let alone with speedrun tricks on top of it, there's a lot of visual fun that you could have. It was kind of like easy to put in these games because there weren't as many big game submissions. Easier to slot these in. Doom was hard to decide between 2016 and Eternal. Of the categories, this was kind of the newer one. With restricted, it's a variation of Doom. Doom is one of those games where it doesn't matter if it's Eternal or 2016. If you put it in front of someone, they'll be impressed. So
Yeah.
I could see 2016 making it in. I could see Eternal having a longer category. But I would expect a modern Doom to most likely make it in, just be kind of like this cool visual display. And then last, it's Halo 3, with the caveat that the first list on the next page will be Halo Infinite.
Yep.
The reason for Halo 3 and Halo Infinite is Halo Infinite's any percent is fairly short. But given that Halo Infinite came out, a few months ago, it was a really well received game, very unique in the Halo series and how it was more open world versus as linear as it can get. But having that just as a 30-minute run didn't feel like enough Halo. Halo should almost always be in every marathon, given how important that series is. So yeah, toss in Halo 3, very solid runner, very fun category. Legendary is always fun to watch, and it's been a long time since we've seen a well-played Legendary run. And no, Halo's one of those communities where like they always have good runners that are always getting better. So 2015 to 2021 in terms of skill, it's not that the 2015 runner was bad. It's that everybody's put in so much time that everybody's gotten a lot better since then. For the second page of picks, Ghost kind of pointed this one out. Perfect Dark Xbox Live Arcade.
Perfect box.
This box is perfect. So the big thing with this run, very popular game, but running it on N64 kind of sucks because of how laggy it is. Guess what? Xbox Live, no lag, baby, and slightly better graphics. Really, everything's just kind of smooth. Portal is one of those that might not make it in. It's been a while since we've seen Portal 1, given how frequently it's been in Marathon though. So I think for 15 minutes it was very easy to slot in. And then
wow, it's been 10 years since we saw any % Portal.
Yeah. So the thing with portals, they tend to do a category called inbounds, which is where you don't go out of bounds. Although you kind of do, but like not really. It's like there's like a specific definition for what category or what counts as inbounds.
It's been very funny because I've always heard like, well, inbounds is the one where people understand what's going on. It's like, no, it doesn't matter.
No, Portal goes so fast, you have no fucking idea. Yeah,
it's so fast, but it's so cool. And the concept is, even if it's weird to think about how long it's been since Portal came out, but even if people aren't as familiar with the game for like newer audiences, it's such an easy concept. You shoot holes in wall, you go through holes, and then everything falls apart. So it's a very easy run to toss in. Power Slave Exhumed and Proteus would be the kind of newer boomer shooters that I mentioned before. They were really fast, like they're very fast and very cool. But I wouldn't be surprised if there is a third kind of modern boomer shooter. There's been a resurgence of this genre in the past few years. I think Dusk really kicked it off. So seeing these kind of old classic where you're literally just running around and shooting stuff, not really caring about cover, not really caring about physics in a lot of ways. It's cool to see these games come back, and because they all play naturally very fast, they're usually very good runs. Proteus is also metal as hell. That was my reason for Proteus. It was just lots of skulls. And then Chaos Theory. So Chaos Theory is a run I love, but it has the core issue, which is it is pitch black if you don't play it in a way where you are very purposefully illuminating the game as needed. And I watched the run, and I was really looking at specific stages, like, hey, what about I want to say it's Korea, or Korea is one of the stages where it is pitch black if you don't play in a very particular way. Is a runner doing that? And the answer was yes. They were very, very carefully like lighting things up. It was very watchable, and it's a very fun run because there is constant danger in Chaos Theory. You're very easy to kill. But going quickly involves running in the open quite often. So I think it's a big enough game. It's a very fun run. I think this will be well received if it does get in.
It's worth noting as well, I don't think they've ever actually done a I don't even know that they've done a Tom Clancy game, let alone a Splinter Cell.
They have done a Splinter Cell game, I know, because I was a runner there.
I was gonna say, I thought you ran it.
Sorry. Yeah, this would have
was
been like
well, but it
yeah,
wasn't
a
a
long time
traditional
ago.
run. It was
Mhm.
Splinter Cell Blacklist, and that was at I think SGDQ 2016 or 17. And that was the co-op category, so it wasn't even the actual normal playthrough. It was the very fun, goofy mode, and it was a very fun, goofy run. But like, actually, Splinter Cell is kind of a goofy game when you play it quickly, but like, it's still very serious, intense. While this was just us shooting through the game and just having a grand old time. I think
Yeah,
it
the
was
It's also
point.
free on
like a little bit later of a Splinter Cell. I think they got a little bit into the more actiony stuff at that point as well. Like there was like a lot of lore that like
Yep.
changed how the game played.
Blacklist is a very fun game, and it's definitely not as processy as Chaos Theory. You have a lot less individual controls in how you can be sneaky.
Yeah, the
Actually,
point
it's funny
being
if you go
they
back to original Splinter Cell because you're like doing splits in alleyways, like 10 feet above the ground, and it doesn't make any sense and it looks really weird. And actually, that was also submitted, and that also has a pretty good chance of getting in. I just think Chaos Theory was a bigger game.
yeah, they haven't really done like very many of these at all. Like I went in ahead and looked it up. So they did that one, and then yeah, they did Blacklist, and then they did Pandora Tomorrow at like the early days of like
Yeah,
HQ 2011. The
and
point being, Tom
that's a
Clancy
modern
stuff.
game.
Yeah, Tom Clancy stuff just doesn't get in. I know that there's SGDQ's hesitancy to do any sort of shooting thing. It's like you wouldn't see like a Ghost Recon or any of his other like big series like Rainbow Six.
Well, I think a lot of those games just aren't good runs, quite frankly. Like I love the Rainbow Six games, but you don't really see a lot of it. Like it's very, very fast, but not interesting. Because like, oh, you shoot a guy and then the level's over, but you didn't like do anything to do that. You just positioned yourself properly in the first
Mhm.
10 seconds of the map. So like a lot of and the problem, like I said, with a lot of older Splinter Cell games is it's very hard to see what's going on. It has a Doom 64 problem. They're dark games.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be very hidden, and if you actually try and watch someone play a Splinter Cell game, it's hard to see what's going on unless they're going out of the way. And the runner did a very good job of highlighting the game, so I'm excited.
Lots of amazing shooters on this list. Always a game. Like generally, there ends up being like a Wednesday or a Thursday in a GDQ that's just here's all the shooters. Just tons of really good ones across tons of different series. Obviously, a very popular genre. Let's jump to one that generally has a little less going on, but the submissions for it were actually a bunch of bangers. I know you talked about Ghost King. We got racing games right here, and y'all had to cut it down. There was a time where I think we had like 6 or 7 racing games at one point in this marathon. Finally had to chop it down to these 3.
Yeah, so one of those was Mario Kart. We had Mario Kart 8 and Mario Kart. We think they're gonna wait on doing Mario Kart 8's DLC tracks just because there's more to be coming out. They want to do all of them at once. Could be wrong about that. They could just take the new thing for like a 16-minute run. But Mario Kart Wii, this is a similar deal to Crash 100, Crash to 100%, where the category was actually in on the most recent games list, had to withdraw for reasons we won't get into, and this is a runner who actually has a better time than the other runner who did do that. So we were just like, that's a no-brainer. 32 track skips Mario Kart Wii. There was like 7 racing games we thought of taking. There was like a Toho racing game that was actually pretty solid. It's not the Toho game that we have in here, but like it just ended up losing out to the rest. There was a Looney Tunes game that was like an hour 50, so it was a little bit longer than I would have wanted to predict for, but it was fucking hilarious. So honorable mention to that one. Like
One of the last games we got was the new Chocobo Racing as well, which is worth mentioning.
yeah. Yeah, that was like one of the last cuts was Chocobo Grand Prix, and that was mostly because the game's casual reception is probably worse than like the actual speedrun is in quality. So that ends up leaving us with 3 here. We talked about Mario Kart Wii, F-Zero GX. So this game has actually been in a few times fairly recently. It's generally been like the longer all tracks category, which is like an hour 20, which is it feels like a little bit much for how much of this game is just kind of the same kind of racing, go forward the whole game kind of run. Um, would have thought maybe this would have been a little bit, they would have waited on this one, but when we actually took a look at this offer, the runner for this one, let me get his name right, Artful Hobbs. Uh, he is better. He has a better time in this category than CGN. Which, if you don't know CGN, he
Yeah.
blew up when AGDQ 2014 when he ran the game there, because this game is fucking insane at that level. So if you have a time that actually manages to beat his, that immediately should get your attention. Like This is an incredibly skilled runner, an incredibly skill demanding, really difficult game. At 40 minutes, I think this one gets moved up a little bit in the cycle, and you go out of your way to get this one.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. F-Zero GX, one of the, again, like, even if you never played the game, just one of the most thrilling speedruns from start to finish. And it actually, unlike a lot of other games where it's, a handful of laps around the same tracks and get a little samey after a while, every chapter you're doing something different. So it truly keeps interesting from so many different standpoints for its entire 40-minute length. So.
Yeah, and then finally Road Redemption was one that I was like adamant that we keep on the list, even though it's definitely a more obscure game. The backdrops in many of the levels that we saw were really cool. The amount of like reaction time for how like fast you need to dodge incoming things is really cool. This was just one of those games that as soon as I see it, I'm like, this is dope. I want this in.
So. Couple cool racing games here and there. Again, there are a lot of good ones, and I will say GDQ has been a little more open for taking some of the driving games that have kind of been offered over the last few years. So I would not be shocked if we saw a few more than this. Like you said, it was a stacked lineup, maybe a Chocobo Dungeon or something here and there, or Chocobo Racing, I should say. Yeah. But we'll see. We'll see what gets thrown down. Jumping into the next category, we got sports. That is a real Yu-Gi-Oh card.
It's supposed to be a picture. Cool, you insisted on having this one in here.
This is the German version of a card called UA Perfect Ace. So get Perfectus Ass.
UA Perfectus Ass, dog. Anyways, one of the sports games we got coming in here, we got you, man. Tony Hawk's Existential Nightmare. Now we got a couple of the older Tony Hawk games. Tony Hawk 3, Tony Hawk 4, and Ring Fit Adventure. The Tony Hawk games are always fun to watch. So
yeah, they haven't done 3 in a long time, and it feels like they like to parlay it with another one, which is why we leaned into Pro Skater 4, which also hasn't been in quite a while. These are just really good runs at a high level to watch. The other one that I almost kept on but ended up cutting, which I give an honorable mention to. I'll make sure I get the name of the game right. Airblade. That was. It's kind of like a hoverboard Tony Hawk like, which they have been taking Tony Hawk like. There was one on a scooter a couple years ago, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So just really cool, intense speed runs that are fun to watch. Now, Ring Fit Adventure, you don't really think of that game when you think of speed running, so this is gonna sound a bit weird that it's on here, but let me explain this one really quick. This run is submitted by a Japanese runner by the name of Iwata. Iwata closed the most recent RTA in Japan marathon. First of all, this dude is jacked. So watching this dude play Ring Fit Adventure, he looks like the kind of person who would be good at speedrunning this game. I just wanted to say, like, there's amusement from just that fact alone. But second, his run, the peak of viewership of that marathon was 175,000 people when he was running Ring Fit Adventure. That is more than GDQ, even the in-person events, has had in the last 5 years, except for 1 point at AGDQ 2020.
Jesus.
The VOD of this run has 800,000 views on YouTube.
Jesus.
Like, they'll put this run at like late night to appeal to the Japanese crowd, and it will go over well. That's kind of like my thought behind it. It's also just a game everyone has played. Like, it's one of the better selling games on the, or at least everyone is familiar with, on the Switch.
Yeah, it is just such a unique idea to potentially show off. It is kind of your opportunity, like you've done with like rhythm game showcases and some of these other things. Tetris, even in the past, where just this is so different than everything else you will have seen. A lot of people, whether you've played Ring Fit Adventure or not, like you said, they are familiar with it. People are going to want to show up and be like, yeah, what's this going to look like? Yeah, this would be definitely very interesting to see. I'm assuming it's Beat World 1. Intensity that's max level 30.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's,
also to note, we don't have any of those other showcasey type things either. Not that some of them don't look like interesting or solid, just very hard to predict when some of those get in, and didn't have any of those really stand out to us as they've got to do this one.
Yeah, it's kind of the taskbot problem where like the showcases recently, there've been a lot of just like one-upping each other and just how intense this really is. So they now are at the point where it's like we see something that looks kind of derivative of something that they've already taken, or it's just something that they've already taken, or it's like the method of operation isn't quite as like fascinating that we think that they would want to, go for it right away.
I will say personally is that like I think the rhythm game showcases have been really cool at GDQs.
Oh,
I think it's good that they've tried them. Yeah. I feel like with this past GDQ, it was nothing against the runners or anything. I was like, I feel like rhythm games could take a GDQ off. I just like after a while, your brain can get a little desensitized to it. And they definitely had some longer ones this last GDQ, so we'll see. I think there's going to be good rhythm game offers for years and years to come. I don't think it has to be gone forever, like the era is over. But I could see this GDQ being, let's take a break from it.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, bye-bye, Tony Hawk. Let's move on to our next era right here. We got the NES. Look at that adorable little thing. You can hold it in your hand. You can put it in your pocket. You can just bring that to events. That'd be great. And we had a rather tiny NES block. It used to be NES, obviously, used to be a much bigger thing with like the SDA crowd and everything. Have tons and tons, dozen plus NES games. And now we actually went with a little bit of a smaller group. Generally, these make a little less money, but still, they're great speedruns all the same. Came up here with a little 4-pack of games in Blaster Master, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers 2, Metal Gear, and Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden in particular sticking out to me from this group. A very, very entertaining runner. You can follow him on YouTube, Retro Runner, who now has the world record in Ninja Gaiden. I think would do an amazing job at that showcase. Ghost King, I know we talked about potentially having our third Metal Gear game here in the marathon.
Yeah, so this is, I mean, we categorize it as NES because I know the game has an NES version. This is actually the version that's on the Metal Gear Collection for PS3. Just an all-around solid run. They haven't done, like, classic Metal Gear. This might be a little bit too much, but I mean, they've also done, like, up to 4 at one point, so hard to say.
It's also a very different game.
It's a very different game,
Metal
too.
Gear, that game is terrible, but, like, fun in action.
Other than that, Swordsman Kirby here, potentially offering up Chip 'n Dale, or not potentially, offering up to potentially end up doing Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers 2. These are always fun. A lot of people don't know as much about Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers 2. It's Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers 1 with different levels in it. It's very much the same kind of game. And then you got Blaster Master here. I believe you were potentially looking at a race category for this one. Used to be this run was done all the time way back in like OG GDQ days. And now it's every couple years they throw this in. It's been 3 years potentially. It is in cycle.
Yeah, this was up there with Soten and Super Metroid as like the third most run game of the like all GDQ. Dumb, kind of funny.
Yeah, they just always had offers for it. Which back in the OG GDQ days, you were just like, listen, we just need butts and seats. We need some warm bodies. We need some runs to fill up a schedule. And Blaster Master was just kind of always there. It's always a good run. So. That being said, let's go on to the 16-bit era. We got SNES. So we got a wishbone here. Why is there a wishbone here?
The controller.
Does it look like a... Yeah, it's kind of a wishbone. I think of like the NES wishbone in particular for it. So, but yeah, let's jump in. We got some SNES games right here. I wasn't here as much for this group, so I'll let you guys take over which of these.
This one's a little bit weird. Magical Quest. There's a few different ones of these Disney games, and this was one of our like last few runs we got in because we weren't because there's a few of them we weren't really even sure which ones that we would take. We ultimately settled on this one.
Magical Quest 3 is a little strange because it's Japan only, but like Magical Quest 2 is a game that's been in a couple times. It's a fantastic game. It's a great speed run and a great watch. Like this has all of the Magical Quest 2 stuff in it basically. Like it looks like a sequel to a game that a lot of people love from their childhood. Like it's a little strange just because of it never came out in English, but I still feel like it's got a good shot to be done. It was like I said, one of the last ones on the list, so I wouldn't be shocked if this gets left out. GK, you could talk a bit more about Gods, Majuo, and Sparkster.
So Gods. This game just has really funny animations. The moment I first saw this game, I was like, I really want to see this get into GDQ. I saw this submitted to a Calithon event like a year and a half ago, and I thought to like get it into that event. It's just I love the animations in this game. It looks like SNES nostalgia incarnate, and it's a very palatable 24-minute length. Maju O, one of OmniGamer's games, he like sneaks in a 25-minute SNES game every few events. This one,
It's
like the entire
time.
time, like he always delivers stellar commentary. The entire time I was watching this, I was just like, yeah, this is pretty solid. I definitely could see this getting in, and I predict that it gets in because OmniGamer gets these in. The nice thing is that OmniGamer is GDQ staff, and given the hybrid nature of the event, I expect we'll see at least a few staff backups. So even if this doesn't get into the main event, I could definitely see this one getting in on the backup list solely so that they, have, staff members that they could fall back on. Word of advice to anyone doing marathons, by the way. Have your staff members able to do runs on a whim, because if somebody has to pull out last minute, they're the people you can most rely on to be there. And then finally, Sparkster. This game just is really cool. This is just a really freaking cool speed run.
Yeah,
I originally put this on Genesis because I think of it as Rocket Knight, but this is the
I
SNES
know,
game.
I do all the time as well. But yeah, this is the SNES version of Rocket Knight Adventures, effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not a whole lot to say. It's got some really cool like movement routing. Draco's done this a couple times. His commentary for this game is usually very good. So, like, I think it's back in cycle. So, yeah, not a lot to say there. Just really cool speed game.
Couple of tiny little categories we just went over in NES and SNES. So let's switch over to by far the biggest category we'll be talking about tonight. Bam! It's time for indie. And we have got 4 slides worth of indie to talk about. So we probably won't talk about every single one of these, chat, just to save some time. We're already getting up close to 2 hours. But let's pick a few on each of these slides. Starting off with BAM. We got this one right here. Among these, we got Celeste, true ending world record holder. And if you're a world record holder in any of the main categories of Celeste, you're pretty good, and the run's going to be pretty entertaining. Everything else here would be the first time showcasing here at a GDQ, including Cyber Shadow, Ender Lilies by Kizaron. I don't know, what do you guys pick out a few from here?
All right, so Cyber Shadow, I just really want to talk about. This is a Yacht Club published game. It's been submitted a few times. The runners keep getting better. It is a little bit long on the indie side, which I imagine they haven't rushed to get it in, but really cool soundtrack. It gets really cool movement. I just really want to see them get this in, and I think it will get in eventually. Ender Lilies, this is one of Kizaron's games. The thing to note about this game is it is one of the biggest indie games released in Japan in a long time. Like, this is a million seller. Like, if you haven't heard of this game, it actually is surprisingly popular. Gensokyo no Nazo, this is the Toho game I was talking about. This is, I think, one of the most like popular fan games in the Toho like fan base in general. So that stood out to me as a pretty solid offer. So Greek, just a solid Metroidvania. Ato, just I think we might have actually predicted this game. Just has really cool movement in general as well. So yeah, that's that slide. It's just really cool games.
Next one, we keep having cool games. We got Hollow Knight in here with the Pantheon of Hollowness, basically the DLC. Having to watch all those bosses defeated back to back to back to back to back. I would say back to back 50 more times to get accurate. Also one on here that I think super jumps out at me is I Want to Be the Guy Remastered. This shit has not been in since SGDQ 2014. I didn't even know they made a remaster to this shit.
Yeah, so the story is the source code got released by the maker. And someone's just like, yeah, I love this game, let's remake it. And realize that I Want to Be the Guy as a genre. It's not a humongous genre, but there is a guy likes Ion And so, like, getting this game in, I think, as a stable remaster that's really been kind of ground down, because the last person to do it was before this game got even more bigger and optimized. I think will be a very fun and cool thing. Also, like, it's stable. It's a stable release of I Want to Be the Guy. This is something that I would have thought was impossible.
Yeah.
Like a year ago, not even like 8 years ago.
Also, yeah, Jump King, you basically have your next Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy in the marathon. Just watching people struggle with this game for 40 plus hours to get to the top of this mountain. You're going to watch someone beat it in 5 minutes. It's Bennett Foddy too, right here. Yeah, big stream game.
Yeah. to talk really quickly about Gunvolt Chronicles, it's a very Mega Man-like. It's by Inti Creates, who did like the Mega Man Zero games and have kind of just been continuing it. I don't particularly think these games are that interesting casually because you just skip over everything because the movement options in this game are so busted, like even in a casual sense. But that tends to actually make for really good speedrunning. That actually shouldn't say last seen SGDQ 20. That was the first Gunvolt Chronicles, which they pretty much took that in the first chance they got. This is a new game. This would be the first chance they had to submit it. So yeah, like it's a dope game, dope movement. They're not super high. Like we weren't super high on the Mega Mans. This would probably go next to the other Mega Mans, to be honest.
It's a Kingdom Hearts ass naming scheme. Luminous Avenger 9-2.
9-2 right there. It really is. Nomura's up there going, "What are you doing? Are you on drugs?" Katana Zero also very cool speedrun. Let's do it again.
Yeah. Yep. They haven't done this one in a few events, but very popular game and slightly different category this time.
Moving on, we're down to the L's in the indie category right now.
So this is the last of our 2Ds. Levelhead just has really cool movement tech. Lumion was just a really cool Metroidvania. Odalis, Castlevania-like.
A badass looking Castlevania mixed with like Lost Vikings. It was actually very, very cool with like a front dash and everything. It's great. I love it.
There were like 4 indie games that all looked like Castlevania-like that we were like, man, this game actually looks like a really cool speed game. This one just ended up being the one we leaned on the most. Spelunky, very popular indie game and hasn't been in a while, so not a ton to say on that one. Super Dream Dasher, just a cool game in general.
Yeah, a lot of these are just like, if you have never heard of them, it's fine. We had never heard of them either. They're just cool. And now for our not 2D side scrollers of the indie picks, we got one of the locks of the marathon, you would think, here at the bottom of the list in Tunic. Already being able to be beaten in like half an hour. One of the top runners in the game, offering up new indie darling that just came out, among a bunch of other classics right here.
Yeah, Hotline Miami, staple, Bastion, indie game staple. I don't actually believe they've done this category, which is why category isn't new. We really don't know. Softbody was in a few years ago. This is like the hard mode of the game, and like I think completely different levels. Just a weird speed game, like a really weird game, but it's cool.
Origami is the weird one in that like people submitted it, but I want to say the submissions have always been weird, which is it wasn't necessarily not Out of Bounds being submitted or like the category wasn't as identified, but Out of Bounds is a very bad new player run. Inbounds is a very good viewing experience, so like please put this in the marathon.
And then Synthetic Legion's just a top-down action game that looked really cool. It was 15 minutes, and it's actually apparently sold a lot on Steam, so...
One small thing that gave me a little bit of pause on this, they haven't really shown this yet, but they tried to cut down on violence a fair bit, it seems. That Hotline Miami is extremely violent.
God, it's violent. It's 2D violent, it's 2D top-down violent, but God, it's violent.
So that's the one thing that gives me a little bit of pause on this list with that, but if they're not concerned with that, it's probably in.
Tons and tons of indie, which makes sense. There's always there's a literally infinite pool of indie games that they can always pull from.
And we're actually not completely done with that, because all of our puzzles are indie too, but we have a separate spot for those.
Oh yeah, shit! Jumping into the puzzle, got the L block here representing for even more indie. Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon. It's got Shovel Knight on the cover. Let's do it.
Yeah, Perspective is like more like a puzzle platformer that's based on perspective. I mean, obviously, like that shifts around what the platforms are. Battle Crash is a really fucking dope game that you all should immediately look up on Steam and put on your wish list because I fucking love this game. It is one of those games like an homage to like Panel de Pon type games, where you clear blocks and you try and put garbage on the other side of the screen. In this game, you're basically moving around boxes, and then when they collide with other boxes of the same color, it causes boxes around to have like a chain reaction. This game looks fucking cool at a high level. It's world record holders submitting. Not a whole lot really to say, but it's like you might not necessarily be able to follow the game, but like everyone I've shown this game to, they're like, yo, this game looks sick.
Jumping in after that, so there's our puzzle games. Here's we didn't know where else to put this, but this is, everything else that isn't specifically in Silly Block, because we did go for a little bit of a Silly Block this year. What do we got here? What are some standouts from this group? Animaniacs we got as a potential. One of my favorite songs from the show. I believe Supersonic potentially running that. Always a good runner. Bulk Slash. Command and Conquer getting some representation here. Klonoa, which could have gone to the PlayStation group. Go ahead.
So, no, we do have two big strategy or RTS games with Command and Conquer, and then on the next slide we have StarCraft Brood War.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, there's also a very good StarCraft 2 submission that I fought a long time since they could do both Brood War and 2. We ended up putting just one in, but do not be shocked if you see both in.
Yeah, it's just a lot of RTS, which isn't really a thing that they go for a ton. But man, like those two games, they've had a handful of times ever, and you have top level runners submitting like both of the games. So this just ended up being the one we leaned on. Don't be surprised if you see StarCraft 2, which that used to be a game that exclusively, I think Railcoon was the only one who ever offered it.
Mm-hmm.
So, finally somebody else is offering. I'm not saying that to knock on Railcoon, by the way.
No.
I don't think they've offered in like.
It's like Railcoon's also not offering right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Strider 2, a badass game from the PlayStation 2 era, just with a really, really cool movement. Nice to see that get in. Minecraft Java Edition. Minecraft, one of the biggest speedruns, if not the biggest speedrun on the planet, the amount of people running it.
It is literally the biggest video game of all time.
Yeah.
It's also this is a weird thing they're going to do. They're going to basically play through it. It's like a 3-team relay, and they're going to beat the game on 3 different versions of the game each. Is how it's going to work, I believe, which is definitely interesting. Could be a nice way of kind of going over the history of Minecraft. Like, there's a lot you can do with that in a way that I think would make it a really engaging run for people. And it's just such a big game with so much money behind it. When you have 9 runners submitting a game this big, there's just almost a 0 chance it doesn't get in.
Mm-hmm.
Last one I'll throw out there is just Klonoa potentially getting another showcase right here. I believe this is the Wii version we're talking about, or is it?
Well, there's both PS1 and Wii. I think we leaned on the PS1 version. I think that one has just a bit more tech. I wouldn't be surprised to see either. But like, there is a collection coming out fairly soon.
There
so
is.
the intrigue around this game. If it's not this event, I can definitely see it being next one.
All right, chat. So now I will split for puzzle because now we're going into Silly Block. I missed a split back there. Sorry, chat. Silly Block. So I wasn't here for most of the Silly Block picks. There's 3 slides worth of this. Just about done with the whole thing. But the ones I did see, they were bangers. Yeah, there's just, I'll get mine out of the way to talk about. Deer Simulator and Don't Spill Your Coffee are 2 of the funniest fucking things I've ever seen in my life. And I really hope they get in. You guys have to, like, for this part of the prediction show, none of y'all have ever heard of any of these games unless you literally submitted it. You just got to trust us. The way we pick our silly games is, did it make us laugh? And the more of us that it made laugh, the more we fought for it, the more we wanted it in. Hopefully, there's a lot of banger submissions here. Hopefully, they take a lot of them. I don't know. What are some of y'all's favorite from the sillies?
I love Baby Coyote. I know that's a little indulgent. We almost had Ghoul in my submission on here, but I was probably fighting for that a little bit more than I should have. Baby Coyote I think is the only game on this list that one of the people in this call actually submitted that we put on here, and that was because the rest of us thought this game was fucking hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess I will explain Baby Coyote because I submitted it. Baby Coyote is an MS Paint game made by somebody who really loves where they're from, and it's an expression of that. But the game is about as well made as if you or I made a game for the first time. So, for example, you can jump off anything, and I mean that like there's a hitbox above the ground you can jump off of. So you can just kind of float in the air forever as long as you're kind of near the ground. You can just jump up walls and jump to the side. And what's fun is the developer started noticing this. So the early levels you just walk through and they're broken. The later levels start having death planes. There's physics, but they're completely out of left field and they're very hard to control. And you fly. There's levels that will run at 3 FPS, and I don't know why. But killing 1 or 2 enemies will increase the FPS. So part of the route is actually to kill enemies to increase the FPS in the game. There will be times where you will hit a death plane but fall into the level exit, and before that you die, and you can complete a level. It's that game. There's just
mentioned my favorite part of this. You can only shoot bullets in one direction.
You can only shoot to the right. And there are enemies and bosses to the left, and so that's part of the routing. Is how do I get to the left side of a boss so I can shoot it to the right?
It makes it sound like it was like an intended like puzzly mechanic of the game. Like, oh, you gotta figure out how to keep them. That's just how the game works. It's just.
What happened, and this is the fun thing, I like the developer a lot because I think they realized they made something busted, but instead of fixing it, which is a lot of work and having to redo all the levels, they said, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to start building around that. So eventually enemies start appearing to the left and you have to dodge, like you cannot kill them until you get to the other side, so that's the challenge. Maybe Coyote rules. Also, it's not, it doesn't look like a coyote.
No, you had to tell me it was a coyote. I had no idea.
Love Baby Coyote.
Yeah, all we can say with some of these other games, fucking Don't Spill Your Coffee is a game where you're trying to spill as much coffee as you can get away with before the game tells you it's too much.
Hey, seriously, anyone go to speedrun.com and just go watch like 2 minutes of Don't Spill Your Coffee or Deer Simulator. I laughed my dick off. It was so good.
Yeah, JJ and Jeff. I don't know if that was submitted for silly. All we know is the main guy has a really funny looking face, and we were laughing at the game the whole time. Like, it's the kind of short silly thing that would end up in there. And we think that they will do a fairly lengthy silly block. There aren't a ton of like long silly submissions that we really love. There is one on here that's a bit long for silly. And we think that they'll do like a banger silly block to kind of celebrate doing an in-person event again.
Mm-hmm. Have some laughs.
There's fucking Pepsi Man, the Forbidden Drink, a game where every time Pepsi Man jumps, he does a dab.
Yeah. Again, I haven't seen this shit yet. Raven Sword, remember? That one looked hilarious.
We put that one in our awful block a year ago. It's just a funny bad game.
Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero is just gloriously terrible. They took like the Mortal Kombat 2 engine and made like a side-scrolling platformer.
It's so bad. It's so fucking bad, dude.
I love it.
God.
There's just something special about it. Like Mortal Kombat before Mortal Kombat 9 was such a disaster, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I know. Why did that series like get good again? Why? I enjoyed it when it was in the shit stains. That's great.
Yeah, Muscle March all levels.
It's a fun watch. No one can stop Mr. Domino. They've done it before, but it's silly enough for the length to not really be a problem.
Also, the fact that the category in a GDQ is 80% slow, you already know it's gonna be good, dude.
Ravensword Shadowlands is just this like really glitchy Western RPG wannabe game where you can get on top of a bird and fly under the ground.
I think they do a dungeon entirely on the bird, and
yeah.
like, it does not look right.
We're not sure all of these are getting in. These are just based on how much we think this game made us laugh.
Because that's what it's super subjective, right? You're just like, well, I thought this was funny. Maybe the games committee thought this was funny. I don't know.
Our methodology for this is we all get in a call. We load up a stream, like one person streams to all of us. We all watch, and if we all laugh, it gets on our list.
Right.
Which is objectively the correct way to do this.
It is. That's what the games committee should be doing. I'm letting anybody in the game. Anybody in the games committee is in the chat. This is how you should do it if you're not doing it that way.
We are the official games committee, Spike. So.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Just so everyone knows, this is the games list. We went 100%.
Is a puzzle game in which a girl just sees bombs all around her in everyday life. So you defuse everything from an orange to a bento box. And it's like there's like random screws and like stuff. It's one of the weirdest puzzle games I've ever seen. It's incredible. I love it. 22
they like
minutes.
half explain it too, and it still doesn't make any sense. It's
awesome. Oh yeah, no, it's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I love it. The corridor is a bit of a meme game where there's a hallway and there's a button at the end of the hallway, and every time you push the button, it closes the game, and the game does something different the next time you boot it up.
Yeah, I don't know if this is enough. I don't know if this is even enough of a run to get it in, but fuck me if this game didn't make me laugh when I saw it the first time.
That's honestly one of those like, hey, you should play the corridor. It's $3 on Steam. Like,
it's not even $3. It's $2 on Steam.
Oh,
with, like, no
okay.
reviews.
Oh baby, we're gonna chat. The raid for this will be raiding Steam to buy this video game. It'll be great.
it made us laugh enough. It was great, especially because like the person had to like screen capture their monitor as opposed to like capturing the game, so that like you could see them reopen it in Steam every time. Unearthed is like they described it as Uncharted at home. It's Uncharted at home. It's amazing.
It's the Mom, can we have some Uncharted? No, son, we have Uncharted at home. The Uncharted at home. It's just a picture of this game. The guy looks suspiciously like Nathan Drake. It looks like a bootleg Uncharted.
It also looks awful. Like the movement is so. Oh my god, it's great. I love it.
The Spy Who Shrunk Me is this great silly game where you're on a train as a spy. One of the first things you do is you get out of bounds on top of the train and you drop a banana peel and a dude who's sitting down slips on it.
And then somebody who put this slideshow together, cool, accidentally left Surgeon Simulator on here twice. It's so good. So
That's fine.
Yeah, it's okay. It's silly block. You know, you got to do a little bit.
And WarioWare. It's part of silly. That's a silly-ass game.
WarioWare is just funny to watch.
All right, well, we had a lot of good laughs there looking through all those submissions. Hopefully they take a lot of nice, fun stuff. Just kind of, you know, give some lightheartedness to our first live event in years. Hopefully first live event. Let's go, though, chat. It is time. Drum roll, please. For the actual lock of the marathon, what will happen? Guaranteed after 10 years of submitting this shit, they're going to do Where's Waldo?
So you're the Waldo.
You fucking okay. So for context,
I love that this is the picture for this. Please explain why this is the picture.
Okay. So for years and years and years, Crack Attack had been running this game to try and get a sub 2-minute time. After 77,000 attempts, he got the sub 2-minute time, and the next day he streamed him destroying the cartridge.
Here's a real fact, chat. I have nothing to back this up except for my own brain and heart putting a lot of energy into this. Crack Attack has played Where's Waldo 77,000 times. The rest of the world, including the devs, combined have not played that game 77,000 times.
This game is a meme at every event. I know several people who run this and submit this. Shoutouts to what was it, Limit Break 2017, where you had the couch interview.
Yeah, the
where
IRL Where's Waldo race with Vic and.
That was one of the best ideas we ever had, dude.
That is the greatest interview we've ever had. It will never be topped.
Ghoul with the shout casting, me with having to be the judge for the whole thing. It was good. It was a good time. It was a good time. All right, Where's Waldo? Well, I hope you finally get your submission here in the GDQ. And to give you a little bit of good luck, here's a dead Yamcha.
All right, thanks everyone for watching. I had a hell of a time putting this together.
Yeah, chat, it's already a little bit late, so we're going to jump out of here. But again, thank you all so much for watching it. I do want to end on these thoughts that we don't know what we're talking about. We are not the games committee. None of us are even staff with GDQ. We just like to twice a year look at all the different submissions. What's, I think, most fun and most rewarding for us is that just we get to watch a lot of cool new speed games, even if it's just little bite-sized versions of them, and say, damn, there were some some games on here like Odalis and whatnot. They're just like, man, this is a really cool speed run. And hopefully some of y'all maybe saw some of these, just said, I want to go check it out, whether it gets into a GDQ or not. But we'll see. The games list is coming out tomorrow. The official games list done by the SGDQ 2022 Games Committee. And hopefully it's going to be a real banger schedule, and I'm looking forward to the event 2 months from now. Again, hybrid event, a little bit on-site, a little bit off-site. With that, any final thoughts, my friends?
Not too many. I think this is
I
going
do
to be an
have one
interesting
big
year.
shout out I want to give. Massive shout outs to Ghost Kumo. This show probably wouldn't have happened if GK really didn't kind of push things along and get us all in here and doing this. So like seriously, like let's like round of applause in chat. Like GK really was the binding force that made this happen. So otherwise we very likely would not have had a prediction show for this event.
Like, really, this was Ghost Kumo's prediction show, and the three of us helped. Like, that's...
I don't know if I'd say that.
Yeah, Ghost King, without you, this probably wouldn't happen. But either way, this was always a lot of fun to get to do. So
one thing I do want to address and kind of go back on a point that was on our disclaimer sheet. We use just kind of general judgment and history to predict. This isn't necessarily our list.
yes,
So, like, if we don't have your game on here, that doesn't mean that we looked at it and thought it was bad. That doesn't mean that we looked at it and thought that this wasn't getting any either. It means that we kind of just are making a prediction here. And there's a lot of cool stuff we end up leaving out because, like, they tend to categorize things. So, like, if there's 100 good indie games and they take 20, that means 80 of them are being left off. So.
Yeah. I do judge them negatively. I want to point out
Yeah.
I'm actually very mean.
Shit,
Ass pick.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tonic, for making that a thing.
Shit ass pig.
Yeah,
This is
I
a
will say that,
shit-ass
like, trying to go off of, like, you know, past processes and stuff is part of, like, it's really interesting, and it gives us, like, a lot of, you know, we try to get our best insight into what the committee does. Because, again, we're not the committee. We don't have direct contact with them. We can't, like, ask them questions or anything. All we really have to go on.
we can. They just want to answer.
Yeah,
We can
Russ!
ask questions all day.
In general, like,
know.
I've thought for these prediction shows, I'm just going to message one of them and be like, yo, what are you taking? Oh, look. 100% correct on
I'm in
predictions.
like 7 discords with Sent.
but
I know
in
exactly
general,
what
all we
anime
do,
is,
you know, we go off what they do in the past and try to go from there. And that, you know, that has its flaws. Again, we're not going to predict, you know, when they do something big, crazy, and out there, it's hard to tell. So, you know, if you have a you know, personal, like, you know, sweetheart run that you really want to see, or a showcase or something that, like, we only have so much information to go off of, right?
Right.
And ultimately, the games committee will come to their own conclusions, and I'm sure they're gonna, whatever they put together is gonna end up being a banger list, even if it looks nothing like ours. I think what's our batting average in the past? About, you know, maybe 50% on a
Yeah,
good, on a good
40 to
list?
60% any given year. We land between 40 and 60% on the whole thing, yeah. And it's tough. Like, there's probably a lot of times, I would say there are probably game submission people who would watch this and say, oh, that's valid. We went with this one instead. It's like you were talking about Ghost King. We went with Xenoblade 1. They did Xenoblade 2. Like, you know, it's at the end of the day,
we have the right, like, logic behind it.
right.
And yeah, and you say, like, we're, you know, 40 to 60% accurate, but, like, something like an Elden Ring is a lot easier to predict than a Xenoblade, I guess. Like,
Sure.
especially a specific one. Like, Elden Ring, we look at that and it's like, oh, we're like 99.9999 repeating percent sure that they're going to take that.
Yes.
Whereas there's other things that, like, maybe we're 30%.
So we'll see. But again, like we were saying, just because we didn't have your game on this list was not in any way a projection. A list of what we want to see in the marathon would look very different from this. Not saying any of these are bad or we don't like them. Just at the end of the day, you know, we're trying to predict what they're going to do, not necessarily like, this is the games list we'd put together or anything.
A list of what we want would have 100% more Yu-Gi-Oh in it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there would be a video game tied to this slide on screen right now in the marathon. I guarantee you. So.
Yep.
But. All right, chat. Well, thank y'all so much for watching. Anybody for the personal stream tomorrow, SM64 Crowd Control in the morning. Come by, check it out. Doing stuff for charity. And then Breath of the Wild for Dashing Through Time tomorrow. I want to give a big shout outs to Studio Ghoul and Ghost Kuma all for joining me and putting this together. Glad we got back together and did it. This was a ton of fun. And we're looking forward. Best of luck to everyone who did submit. Hope your games get into SGDQ 2022. But I can't wish for all of you to get in. Otherwise, the event would be 3 months long. So, everyone have a lovely night, and we will see you all later. Bye-bye.